investments start to come back into the UK. So absolutely, yes. We think Germany, being a big open economy, has suffered the most from the uncertainties in the EU. And we think it's going to benefit the most from some of that uncertainty being dissolved.
It did jump out to me this morning that investors are fairly optimistic about a lot of asset classes, but one they're simply not is around sterling at this point.
Right.
All the Brexit risks as we've had the election, and then, of course, Boris Johnson making those moves to ensure there's a limit on the transition period. Sterling has suffered, and we are cracking below the 130 handle as we look to wrap up the year. How optimistic are you that we see some improvement in the trade from here?
I mean, what we're seeing with sterling is a lot of the shorts have been removed, but it still feels like a currency that no one has that much confidence in. And Boris Johnson having his majority, but then saying, by the way, people were betting on an extension. He was pretty clear that he doesn't want an extension to leaving the EU. So it does feel like sterling is going to remain under some pressure for some time now, even though it does feel like a lot of the technical pressure, the shorts, have been removed.
I hate a narrative that everybody's on the same page as, and it feels as though that's what's happening with sterling, a little bit like when we were seeing the shorts initially and then the moves to the upside. The problem with this scenario, as we've been debating for recent weeks around the set, is that there is an ability, isn't there, for some form of a phase one trade deal, elements of a trade deal to be cut with Europe. So I wonder whether the market is overly pessimistic on the one page, Jeffrey.
I think the market is, so when we say, okay, lack of a deal by the end of next year, so can we define what a deal looks like first? If it's going to be a bare bones deal in the way that, okay, the phase one sign a US deal, or what Japan and the US sign up, but just have a framework and then allow the sectors to actually deal with it themselves. I don't see any issue, with that. And by the end of next year, it would have been, 4 years, since the referendum. So, companies would have activated contingency plans already. If you haven't sorted out, some of the permits or the licenses you need as a third country, I think even SMEs, they would have done it already. So there's not going to be a cliff edge. I think that even under WTO terms. So I think that downside is misplaced. For sterling, however, I would look out for cable specifically. What does the dollar do heading into next year? That is a trade which probably needs to let some steam out. Yeah.
It's a bit of a boy who cried wolf story. It's hard to be serious about any of the deadlines now in the UK when it comes to Europe. Gentlemen, we'll pick up the conversation in just a moment. Giuliano is taking a look at the luxury sector today.
Yes, indeed. Well, it's been a tough year for luxury. So let's take a look at the moves we've seen. Retailers who have long relied on Hong Kong as a magnet for travelers and shoppers. That is indeed the luxury sector. Many retailers have seen a slump in revenues due to the political unrest in the region. However, one outlier appears to be LVMH. Its share price has enjoyed an almost consistent rise this year. LVMH shares this morning trading a touch light, but overall trading at $413. It's been a massive year for this company with their Tiffany's acquisition coming through earlier on, and this has been one of the key outperformers over the last year or so. And we're going to have a lot more on the retail sector later on this morning, so look forward to that. Now, bricks versus clicks remained a key battleground for retailers in 2019, but the sector also faced a number of challenges outside its control. Courtney Reagan tells us what to expect in 2020.
2019 was a difficult year for retail with clear winners and losers. Expect the divergence to continue in 2020. First, the tariff divide. While the country's tariff schedule continues to evolve, brands and retailers aren't waiting to adapt, and some will do so easier than others. Big retailers like Target, Walmart, and Best Buy use scale and influence to keep prices low for shoppers by insisting the brands they buy from take on whatever higher cost result. It will hurt smaller, less powerful players. Second, old is new again. As the retail resale market grows, watch for more retailers to experiment with new ways of selling merchandise secondhand. As Gen Z focuses on more sustainable shopping, watch for retailers to deploy new consignment options, giving old merchandise second life. And third, new CEOs, new strategies. Many retailers have or will have new CEOs settle in the new year, including Bed Bath & Beyond, Nike, Under Armour, Tapestry, and Gap. Investors wait to see if the new leaders will dramatically shift the strategies in new directions and then decide if they're willing to give them a chance to make change.
Coming up on the show, Santa skis, but will the slopes be smooth for investors next year as central banks once again ponder how to exit easy money? We'll discuss ranges and rallies and possibly a few moguls right after the break.
Potatoes too.
Do the Albert Bartlett potato mash.
Do the twist.
Do the patatas bravas with a British twist.
Yeah. Do the brown sauce, balsamic and chutney.
Oh, do the melting potato slices.
Do the dishes.
Grab a brand new recyclable bag today and do the Albert Bartlett.
He's got a brand new bag.
The Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
The Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say,
What Does the Fox Say,
and of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is a tag.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Trade tensions between the US and China have dominated market sentiment and influenced economic data more than any other macro theme this year. But what's in store for the US economy next year? Steve Leesman breaks it down.
Nothing is more central to the outlook in 2020 than what happens to the trade war. It looks to have depressed growth here at home and around the world this year. It led the Federal Reserve to reverse course and cut rates sharply in 2019. Here's what to look out for in 2020. First, the trade war should improve somewhat, or at least not get worse. As the year drew to a close, that seemed to be the case already with the announcement of a limited U.S.-China Phase 1 deal. Uncertainties will remain, but business will learn to invest and prosper in a world with a constant rumbling of trade disputes. Second, assuming a lot of damage hasn't already been done, that should help to lead to improved global growth. That could help lift U.S. growth towards 2.5% in 2020, or a half point above where it likely closed out in 2019. But third, the Federal Reserve should remain on hold while much of this plays out. It could consider raising rates if global growth also firms global inflation and other central banks start to hike.
The global economy has seen a downturn in the last year, hit in particular by the ongoing trade tensions between the US and China. However, not all market participants are feeling pessimistic. Goldman Sachs' Christian Müller-Glissman includes us in as to why he's feeling optimistic.
last year was a terrible year, no? And that created a good starting point for this year. So you had the ability to recover from depressed valuations, recession pricing, and I totally agree that monetary policy was the key trigger here. It's actually a very common thing to see equities and bonds go up together if you see a significant monetary policy shift. You've seen the same in 2016. You've seen the same actually in the mid-90s when the Fed had their mid-cycle adjustment. So it's very common to have a bull market and everything where gold, yen, everything goes up together. But from here, you're right that it will come back to growth, no? Because we have probably seen most of what monetary policy can do with a mid-cycle narrative. From here, I think monetary policy will going back to buffering a potential recession. So the central bank put is much more out of the money. So next year has a chance to be much more either reflation, equities up and bonds down, or you will have eventually frustration on this rotation, and you will actually get the bond market rally a bit and maybe equities down. We're leaning more towards the constructive scenario.
Now, it's obviously worthwhile to look at the overall equity performance of 2019, but to just do that, it masks the divergence we've seen recently between those cyclical sectors and the defensive sectors, this major rotation that's come together in the last couple of months. What's your view as we head into 2020? Perhaps firstly on investor positioning, how much this trade has actually carried out, how much of the trade has been carried out, and whether that's going to continue into next year.
Again, a very good point. I think last year or the current year, you've had real yields really be the key driver across assets. So you had the TIPS yield fall from 100 basis points to 0 in the summer. And that drove a very defensive, up in quality type positioning in portfolios, not just cyclicals versus defensives. People were focusing more on defenses, but also value versus growth is a good example where people really bought stable growth stocks. They did the same in credit. People didn't touch the triple Cs. People focused on the up in quality trade. And to push the market up from here, unfortunately, these parts which have been lagged behind need to have a bit of performance, no? And it's very consistent with growth taking over as a driver that these parts of the market are actually leading a bit. The problem is that you're not just dealing with like a cycle pickup, no, after 2 years of global growth slowdown, you're also dealing with a lot of structural headwinds for these type of companies. So you have like structural headwinds from decarbonization, structural headwinds from the lower growth you're facing in the world, and they're not going away. So a lot of clients, they are reluctant to buy structurally challenged companies because of a cyclical pickup. And that might mean that you won't get as powerful of a rotation as you might have gotten in 16, for example.
Let's come back to the conversation on strategy here around the studio set. Altaf Kassam staying with us, EMEA Head of Research and Strategy at State Street Global Advisors, and Jeffrey Yu staying with us from UBS Wealth Management. I want to get into your overall calls, and you're both the same that you prefer the United States, but you start to split from that point where Jeffrey likes emerging markets, you're neutral, and when it comes to Europe, you like Europe, but you don't prefer Europe. So let's just spell out the strategy to investors. Why the United States first up and some of the other markets like Europe?
Well, the US definitely has the most resilient economy. So if we're looking for a market where, you know, you can be more comfortable, then we feel like the US is the place. It's got, you know, stronger productivity growth, low unemployment, and the consumer has been, you know, the bedrock of that market, you know, over the last 18 months. So we feel comfortable staying in the US. Feels overvalued. We need to see earnings growth, but it still seems like a great place to be. Europe, on the other hand, obviously had a pretty tough 4 or 5 years. We feel like it's coming back. We've talked about Germany and the prospect of fiscal stimulus. We will have to see some reforms. We feel confident in Madame Lagarde. You know, we feel like governmentally the ECB is in a good place. So we're starting to get more positive on Europe. And emerging markets, we've closed our underweight. We're at neutral. But we're getting a bit more optimistic as well.
You just captured my attention around earnings. You have to see those earnings translate in the States. But 2019 was a rally without earnings growth in the States. So why is 2020 going to be any different?
Well, we hope that, we've had this cloud of the US-China trade war hanging over markets. We feel like that's inhibited corporate spending. A lot of the excess cash has gone into buybacks, for example, so financial engineering. We hope that with the dissolution of that trade uncertainty, there's going to be more productive uses of capital, and that should spur earnings growth.
Now, you mentioned productivity growth, and I just want to call attention to something that jumped out. One of our producers flagged, actually, that UK productivity growth of just 0.3% over the past decade has won the Royal Statistical Society's accolade as Statistic of the Decade.
Wow.
So you were talking about US productivity growth and how that makes it an attractive market. I'm curious, Jeffrey, perhaps you want to weigh in on the UK. Their productivity growth has been much more lackluster than the US.
It's surprising the Statistics Society is awarding that award to something that's impossible to measure, right? But yeah, it's been well flagged, by the Bank of England. I think the next governor, will need to address that as well. I'm not sure how regulation ties into it, but this goes back to the point about fiscal, right? So fiscal investment targeted fiscal investment into productivity, that is so essential. Infrastructure, education. What actually I don't really want to see in terms of fiscal spending in the UK is less targeted, which increases the risk for slippage, where, yes, money may be in people's pockets, but they spend it on imports.
I'll take for 20 seconds or less. Give us a call for 2020.
Well, I think it's going to be, a good year for risk assets. We do believe that equities are going to continue to perform, in the US in particular, but it will be a revival, we think, in Europe, and we'd get more positive on emerging markets as well.
Okay. Altaf, thank you very much, and Merry Christmas, Happy New Year to you.
Happy holidays.
Thank you for a great 2019. Altaf Ghassan with us, EMEA Head of Research and Strategy at State Street Global Advisors. Jeffrey, you staying with us.
Coming up on the show, how the Russian government is responding after the U.S. imposed sanctions against one of its pipelines. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev's comment after the break.
Start your day earlier and smarter.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
On a morning that could herald the darkest of days, one man is running late, like proper late. Starring Kevin Davis in his one-man race against the McDonald's 10:30 breakfast deadline.
I'll stop you there, mate. Breakfast's now served until 11 a.m, so there's no rush, no drama.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year?
I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
Sean McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. With music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, hook, into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
For investors, the Dow jumps nearly 100 points to another record high, with Wall Street poised to ride a Santa rally into Christmas. But European bourses failed to join the ride. Boeing ousted CEO Dennis Muilenburg a week after halting production of its troubled 737 MAX jet, with board member David Calhoun set to take the top job in January. A lump of coal for BMW this year as the German car maker confirms it's under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, reportedly over its US sales reporting. And Her Majesty the Queen is not feeling very merry this Christmas as she prepares to deliver her annual message, admitting that 2019 has been quite bumpy. Stories moved the markets in 2019, like the US-China trade war. The two parties have now finalized the long-anticipated Phase 1 deal, but a full resolution is a long way off. Here's what to expect from the trade war in 2020.
The Trump administration rocked the trade boat in 2019 with unpredictable tariffs and short-lived truces. In 2020, international trade will move back toward the status quo. First, China tensions return to a simmer. Fireworks will fade when the U.S. and China sign off on a Phase 1 deal in early January. A second deal will remain far off, but if China engages on and enforces this first deal, expect tariffs to be rolled back slowly. Second, farm finances will be in focus. As planting season gets underway, American farmers will size up the pain of a 2-year trade war and the salve of new business with China, Mexico, Canada, and Japan. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue says more financial aid will be warranted if the ag economy doesn't rebound quickly. Third, Europe will be back in the crosshairs. As President Trump eyes re-election, he'll home in on a new target, the EU. With rising tariffs on luxury goods, the president's stump speeches will be testing ground for new material on auto tariffs and energy sanctions. But he'll pocket those fights until after November.
Leaders of China, Japan and South Korea met this morning amid growing tensions on the Korean peninsula, as well as the trade war front. The three Asian powers agreed to promote dialogue to reach desired solutions on both topics and to foster dialogue between North Korea and the United States. Repeated missile testing by Pyongyang has angered its largest trading partner, Beijing, along with igniting major concerns across the Pacific. South Korean President Moon Jae-in said the countries were committed to achieving denuclearization in the region.
Nothing catastrophic. That's how the Russian government has called the new U.S. sanctions against Nord Stream 2. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev says the gas pipeline will be completed in a couple of months, despite President Trump imposing sanctions on the project. Now, Dara McDowell, head of Europe and principal Russia analyst from Verisk Maplecroft, joins us around the desk. Now, perhaps this is an obvious question, but I'll put it to you anyway. What is motivating the U.S. to interfere?
Well, there's a lot of different factors coming in there. Part of it is simply Democrats and Republicans. This is one of the few issues that they can agree on. The Trump administration has a very strong incentive to appear tough on Russia, to place sanctions like this. And equally, it's been a long-term objective of U.S. policy in Europe to not see the cementing of the European-Russian kind of bilateral gas trade, and also to open up new markets for U.S. LNG in future. So this is one of these few areas of very broad agreement, which is why these sanctions have taken place.
And how would you characterize the impact of the U.S. sanctions?
Our expectation at this point would be that they will be minimal. According to Gazprom and other sources, there's about circa 5% of the NS2 pipeline yet to be completed. Now, the problem with constructing the pipeline is that Russia doesn't have some of the technology for laying undersea pipeline in some of the more challenging geographies, but our understanding is that most of this technical work has been done. Now, there are companies that will no longer be able to work on this pipeline. It will introduce some delays and therefore additional costs, but the technical challenges to completing the pipeline are ones that the Russians are well prepared to overcome. So it doesn't look like NS2 is going to be derailed by this at all.
Do you want to weigh in on the sovereignty issue? That was the excuse from the Germans this week, that the Americans were stepping on their territory when it came to sovereignty. But if we think about the complex relations across the region, and President Trump taking a swipe at the Germans when he was at NATO headquarters last year, then you can see that it's more than just a sovereign issue at this point.
I mean, I think what you're getting at here at the moment is that the transatlantic relationship has been frayed quite a bit. And over the past 3 years, that's pretty indisputable. That's what we've been seeing. That's what we've been saying. Nord Stream 2 is something that comes before this. The issue of Europe's gas relations with Russia is a long-term source of tension with the United States, or a long-term source of disagreement. One of the things that doesn't really come up in the conversation too much is to remember that this is a bilateral interdependency. Unlike LNG, gas has to go from the well to the consumer through the pipeline. So even after you've constructed this, okay, you can say Germany is trapped by Russia in gas, but Russia needs to sell this gas to somebody. It needs to monetize this for its budget. We've seen already this year, there was a dispute between Naftogaz Ukraini and Gazprom. It looked like we were looking at another cutoff this year, but at the last minute, as usual, we've seen a resolution to that, including a resolution to some very nasty arbitral disputes, and we are going to see gas transiting through Ukraine again. That is because not only does Europe need the gas, though it does have a lot under storage at the moment, Russia needs to sell the gas, and Russia needs to monetize the gas, and it's very difficult to use this as a weapon of political influence.
Jeffrey, I want to get you in. We were talking earlier about the ability of, or the prospect of tariffs coming in for various different industries, and there was a response from a German think tank saying that Germany should think about enacting climate tariffs against the US in response to these sanctions around Nord Stream 2, and effectively talking about the fracking and how harmful that is for the environment. So let's lob a sanction against the Americans in retaliation. What do you make of this risk geopolitically around a gas pipeline project?
Well, you talk about transatlantic relations being frayed. That's almost certainly going to make things even worse, especially, let's just say, the diverging views, on this matter across the Atlantic. And what concerns me more is the WTO is effectively shut down right now, so no more appellate judges, on the dispute resolution framework. So tariffs could stay permanent. There's no recourse, to appeal. So that's just going to accelerate deglobalization. Could it actually prompt some positivity? So you've got to invest in yourself. Could that prompt further fiscal easing in Germany? Maybe, but you should just go there directly rather than go through that tortuous route. Right.
Darren, I want to come back to your point about the impact of these U.S. sanctions actually being minimal on the pipeline. I mean, clearly the U.S. Congress and the Trump administration want to have an impact. That's why they went ahead with these sanctions. So how could this situation escalate into one in which we do see more of a substantial impact?
It'd be very difficult to see what, if anything, the U.S. can actually do to slow down NS2 construction. And unless they want to, trade sanctions against the European Union above and beyond the tariffs that we've seen is very unlikely. To the point on carbon tariffs that was brought in, it's important to note this is something that's being talked about, yes, as a counter to the U.S. over NS2, but it's something that the EU has been discussing, generally. We've seen steelmakers and stainless steel makers in other countries with laxer environmental standards competing with EU steel. And the European Union is starting to see the weight of its ability to influence global regulations through things like the GDPR, is starting to think, well, if we're going to be green and we're going to do this, we need to impose an economic cost, and we need to support industries that are going green. That is a potential source of tension with the U.S., depending on what future political developments we see over there. But as far as NS2 goes, there's very little that Washington can do about it.
There have been protesters in Germany around Nord Stream 2, but if we consider the contribution to the energy mix in Germany from this gas, how do you frame how green this contribution is for the grid?
Well, that depends on your calculation as to how green you see natural gas as a transition fuel as we go through. How green it is and how much it contributes to an energy transition is something that we're going to have to watch develop over the next 20 or 30 years. And hopefully for all of us, there'll still be a world standing at the end of that. But when we look at Europe's energy mixture, we're already seeing places like the Netherlands begin to shutter domestic natural gas production. There is going to be demand for natural gas over and above Europe's ability to produce it. That import gap is widening over the years, even as natural gas use declines. So we are going to see a continued role for Russia in the European energy mix. When that actually starts getting down to fully renewable, it's difficult to say. All of these plans are very much on the drawing board at this point.
A silent partner in our discussion now has been Ukraine, and where it is left as this pipeline effectively bypasses Ukraine by going under the Baltic Sea to Germany. What are the fortunes from Russia once this project is live?
Well, as we've seen with this latest round of negotiations, again, Russia still needs that overland transport route. At the moment, when NS2 comes online, we'll have more than ample capacity for Russian gas supplies to Europe. But as I said earlier, European domestic production is going down. The gas market is becoming more competitive, and import demand is rising. So
this is good news for Ukraine still in the mix too.
We would expect that the overland Ukrainian gas transit corridor will continue to be used for the foreseeable future. What this introduces for Russia is greater flexibility in transit routes and a certain amount of, shall we say, in case anything goes wrong in Turk Stream, the Ukrainian overland, or NS2, there is a bit of a backup for this. But fundamentally, this is about, for Russia, it's about securing market share. It's making sure that there is an abundance of cheaply available natural gas into Europe as LNG and other competitors come online and this market gets more competitive.
Darren McDowell, thank you very much for joining us, Russian analyst from the Risk Maplecroft with us. Appreciate the time right on Christmas Eve.
Let's take a look now at how markets are doing here in the UK. Let's take a look at the FTSE 100. We are looking at a slightly weak start to trade on Christmas Eve for the benchmark in the UK. Yesterday, we saw some outperformance of the FTSE 100 relative to broader Europe. And over the last 30 days or so, the FTSE 100 is higher. And that is in contrast to sterling in terms of recent trade anyway. We saw sterling rise to 135 in the immediate wake of the general election result, but it has come off now, trading below 130, and that it comes as the FTSE 100 has largely held on to the gains that it has put together in the wake of the election result. So interesting to note the difference performance in the days since that election result, that sterling has given back those gains, but the FTSE 100 and the FTSE 250 as well, that small and mid-cap index, has also performed quite well. So interesting setup as we head into the new year.
The Queen will make a plea for harmony and reconciliation in her Christmas speech this year as the UK looks to heal its political divisions. Speech extracts released from Buckingham Palace show the Queen will reflect back on the 75th anniversary of the D-Day landings and stress how former enemies can put aside differences to come together. The UK is on course to leave the EU following Prime Minister Boris Johnson's landslide election win. However, that appears to have reawakened the movement for Scottish independence. So we've been talking all morning about risks with Geoffrey Yu, Head of UK Investment Office at UBS Wealth Management. And Geoffrey, we spoke to the former Trade Minister yesterday as well, and he also flagged up that there was potential for risk around Scottish independence again. Is that red flagging for you in 2020?
Probably not yet. We'll see how the Scottish elections go in due course, and it's going to take time for the constitutional process to weave itself through. The fact that we've gone through this once already, I guess, and clients and markets in general know what they're dealing with. If anything, there's not going to be a sense of complacency running up to that in 2014 when no one thought it was going to be a big deal. Then we had that one poll saying, oh, it could actually happen, right? It was not the best poll, I would say. And then sterling, I think we've like 6 big figures, that day or something. So we've had a dry run. If it happens again, then UK has been pretty used to referendums right now, and markets are used to pricing that in as well. I think we can take that into account, but it's still a long way to go before we get there.
Perhaps we just need a common enemy. And maybe if discussions begin around trade and with the United States, it sort of rallies the country to work together. I mean, we've seen a little bit of that in Spain even this year. Some of the exit stories or independent stories by individual states sort of went away for a little bit as some of the trade tensions were a dominant issue for many countries to deal with and the slowing growth story. But now as we look to wrap up the year, these independent stories come back again. So what happens next year if we don't have a common enemy?
Well, I think the common enemy should actually be, partisanship. The common enemy, should be the rancor that we've seen in public debate. So for Her Majesty to talk about reconciliation, hopefully that something can happen over time. But alas, I don't think the outlook is too positive on that. And we need to dig down into the wider issues. So why is there the sense of partisanship? Why is society just becoming more partisan? Is it due to lack of income growth? Is it reflective of generational gaps, income gaps and class gaps, which is often talked about in the UK, or a combination of everything? And it's incumbent on political leaders to bridge that divide. And sometimes if only Nixon can go to China, right? Only populists perhaps can bridge that divide. So we'll see where we go.
Leaders, or the emphasis on leaders. Maybe it's been a lack of leaders in 2019.
I want to come back to markets, Jeffrey. As I was just highlighting there, we've seen a divergent performance in sterling and the stock market in the UK post the general election result. What do you pin that down to? The fact that sterling has now given up its post-election gains while the FTSE 100 and the FTSE 250 have held on to them?
Right. So I think sterling was a vehicle to play, the event risk, around the election. So that was pretty clear. Now the profit takings have happened. So markets are pretty neutral position. FTSE 100, a bit more globally exposed, cyclically exposed. So if we're actually less negative about the global cycle, then that can hold on to its gains as well. Plus, a weaker sterling certainly helps the earnings translation. But the FTSE 250 UK mid-caps more domestically focused and favouring domestic over international. I think that's going to be a theme for all markets next year, and that's helped it hold on to gains as well.
You mentioned sterling being the avenue or the route to display some risk, and we could probably stretch that over to currency markets more broadly. And you're witnessing it in the euro trade, very lackluster trade at the 110 handle, and also on some of the safe havens, the lack of appeal for some of the safe havens at this point. Is there risk that the markets are ignoring that there's some complacency in markets, because it's not evident in bond markets to me, it's not evident in equity markets, but it is being displayed in foreign exchange markets?
So we probably were thinking that when euro dollar implied vol was at 9, thought that at 8, thought that at 7, 6, 5, so
all the way down.
all the way down, right? So there is a risk. From a valuations point of view, I think the euro is undervalued. But fundamentally right now, so you've got the Fed anchoring the downside, whereas as serving as an insurance policy, probably not in a move to hike anytime soon, and the ECB, just even under new leadership, keeping its current path. But so clients be thinking, why should I pay premium to put insurance plays on only for a central bank liquidity gun to hit me in the face? If I've got someone paying for my hedge already, then why should I spend that money? I might as well invest it in a risk-on attitude, right? So I think that's what volatility markets and FX are telling you right now. We need a structural shock, either to the upside or to the downside for it to happen. Clients are overweight, so investors globally are overweight cash, basically dollar cash. How do we actually release, that pressure valve? It's been talked about last year and even the year before. It might take some time yet, but that probably is going to be the big trade, for the next decade.
Okay, what to watch out for. Jeffrey, thank you.
All right, so we're going to squeeze in a short break. Coming up on the Squawk Box, Santa rolls into town, but will he bring a rally this Christmas? We look at bond and commodity markets to see how they have fared as stocks log more record runs.
The CNBC app has new features.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut it.
The sideline, the man fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right.
NBA today to start listening.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2016, when Tennessee quarterback Josh Dobbs throws a Hail Mary to the end zone as time expires against Georgia.
4 seconds to go. Dobbs drops back, looks, loads up, fires long for the end zone. The pass is going to be caught by Tennessee. Tennessee wins! Caught by Tennessee, Jawan Jennings. Jennings makes the catch in the end zone on the Hail Mary.
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR Network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk,
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
You're watching Squawk Box. Congress is stuck in a stalemate after the U.S. House voted last week to impeach President Trump. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are at odds. The Democratic leader released a list of documents he believes are needed for a fair impeachment trial, while his Republican counterpart told Fox News that they're at an impasse until Pelosi sends the papers. NBC's Hallie Jackson has the latest on the standoff.
A holiday hold on impeachment proceedings as key leaders dig in today.
We can't take up a matter we don't have. And so hopefully they'll be on the way over at some point.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell waiting on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to send him those 2 articles of impeachment so a Senate trial can begin. But Pelosi today insists she won't take the next step in the process until we know what sort of trial the Senate will conduct. The president tonight on Twitter responding, she is trying to take over the Senate and Crying Chuck is trying to take over the trial. No way. But Democrats say they just want what's fair, with Senator Chuck Schumer today making the case in a new letter to colleagues, pushing not just for witnesses in a trial, like Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and former National Security Advisor John Bolton, but documents, too, about the president's request for investigations in Ukraine that could have helped him politically, even as military aid to the country was on hold.
We say to President Trump, release the emails, let your aides testify. We say to Leader McConnell, a fair trial with the facts. Only the facts.
Jeffrey, you with us still, and I want to tap into how to invest in 2020. It's a big theme that you're discussing with your clients, and embedded in some of the commentary is a divided U.S. Congress. What do we do with the U.S. in an election year?
Oh, well, firstly, and it's not just for the U.S., but for governments around the world. Sometimes where you have a divided government between the executive and the legislature, like the status quo continues, and if the status quo has been okay, it's certainly been okay for markets for this year, then is that a bad thing, right? Because you don't want if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? But otherwise, I do think that the rancor will come through, and I'm focused on specific sectors, which may be the target of, say, regulation, tech, pharma, financials. These were matters of interest in 2016, for example.
Why financials? Because it felt like there'd been a rowback of regulation. The other two I get, but financials, I'm not so sure.
Well, I think, financials, often I would say a conduit, for, the lack of protection for the wider consumers, and also credit standards, whether that needs to be strengthened. If we just look at what's going on in Europe right now, I do think the regulators around the world will be looking at what more is needed to be done. The echoes of 2008, 2009 are never far away. So all those are three and more, perhaps, they'll be in focus, and that'll be important for asset allocation, because rhetoric at some point, if it's concentrated, it will have an impact, on market sentiment. There's no denying that. But at the same time, we go back to that magic word, fiscal. No matter who wins the election next year in the US, I think we can expect some form of fiscal. Now, what's interesting about the US is because it's such a, relative to the UK at least, it's more internal, closed economy, so the fiscal multiplier is actually larger. So you can have more of an upside surprise if fiscal is priced in. So are we going to get a repeat of 2017, which was a great year for US equities as well? That's something we're going to be looking at.
What kind of fiscal stimulus would you expect from the US, I guess, relative to the corporate tax cuts that President Trump pushed through?
Right. So I remember, so literally the day, after the election, we had clients phoning up saying, give me an infrastructure basket, give me an infrastructure basket. I think we've all passed through US airports throughout the last few years. Compared to some of the Asian airports, some upgrades are needed, amongst other things, right? But, that is probably going to be the main focus. But the difference is it's going to be less deregulation, tax-driven. It's going to be more spending-driven, right? So that, I think, will be the difference. And there's a stronger multiplier there as well. So energy infrastructure as well, so just physical infrastructure, capital investment, that's going to be very, very important. But if you break down the stimulus of 2017, deregulation, that was quite beneficial for the economy as well.
Just quickly, let's close out on technology because it's been a huge year and a real stand-up performer. And I read an article or a headline saying tech is just getting started despite some of the pessimism. I must say I'm on the pessimistic side with more regulation. What do you expect to happen?
We are looking over the next decade enabling technologies. So I think that shift towards smarter, more focused technologies, I think that is still where the long-term trade is. But whether that's going to be through listed markets or direct investments for private investments, in which our clients are more focused on, I think there's going to be a broader mix there rather than just buy a certain basket of stocks in the US and then just wait for indices to go. I think the growth rates compared to what we've seen may be a bit more constrained, but I think tech is here to stay. Yeah.
Jeffrey, must say thank you, goodbye, Merry Christmas to you, one of our regular guest hosts on Squawk Box for the year. Jeffrey Yu, Head of UK Investment Office at UBS Wealth Management. And thank you to all of our loyal viewers for watching Squawk Box over the course of 2019. A Merry Christmas to you all. We'll be right back on Street Signs. Juliana and I see you in a couple of minutes.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night, and somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here, testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2016, when Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield hurls a 49-yard touchdown pass to D.D. Westbrook in a legendary shootout with Patrick Mahomes and the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Snap, play action, rolling right, Baker, one to go deep, he's gonna sling it for the end zone, looking for D.D., he's got it! Oh, mama, he's got a touchdown!
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
Do the Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say,
What Does the Fox Say,
and of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is attached.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Welcome to our Christmas Eve special of Street Signs. I'm Karen Cho.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum. These are your headlines.
A stocking stuffer for investors, the Dow jumps nearly 100 points to another record high, with Wall Street poised to ride a Santa rally into Christmas, but European bourses failed to join the ride.
Boeing ousts CEO Dennis Muilenburg a week after halting production of its troubled 737 MAX jet, with board member David Calhoun set to take the top job in January.
A lump of coal for BMW this year as the German car maker confirms it's under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, reportedly over its US sales reporting.
And Russian defiance on Nord Stream 2. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev vows the gas pipeline will be done in a couple months, saying there's nothing catastrophic about US sanctions on the project.
Thank you for joining us. I'm going to take you to some live pictures of Japanese Prime Minister Abe. He is speaking after holding a trilateral meeting with the leaders of China and South Korea. Now, Abe has been talking about keeping momentum in the denuclearization talks around North Korea. There's been increased rhetoric in recent days and weeks from Pyongyang. And effectively, these three countries now are teaming up to try and de-escalate some of that rhetoric, trying to strengthen their trilateral coordination. So Prime Minister Abe on Christmas Eve giving a fairly key speech, as you can see, in Chengdu. To a big corporate story today. Boeing has replaced its CEO, ousting Dennis Muilenburg after he failed to contain the crisis at the plane maker. The veteran chief was last week forced to halt production of the 737 MAX aeroplanes. The company struggled to meet safety standards despite grounding the fleet for 9 months following 2 tragic crashes. The aerospace giant said a leadership change was necessary to restore confidence as it appointed board member David Calhoun as the new CEO. Calhoun, who has spent much of his career at GE, will begin the role on the 13th of January. Andrew Ross Sorkin sat down with Dennis Muilenburg back in November and asked him about the pressure to step down.
Has there ever been a day where you're sitting around going, you know what, this is not working, it's not working, I got to get out of here. It's better for the company for me to leave?
Andrew, I think it's fair to say I've thought about it. But to be frank, that's not what's in my character. I don't see running away from a challenge, resigning as the right solution.
Meanwhile, David Calhoun offered Muilenburg the board's support over the MAX 737 failures in an interview with CNBC last month.
From the vantage point of our board, Dennis has done everything right from the beginning. Remember, Dennis didn't create this problem, but from the beginning, he knew that MCAS should and could be done better, and he has led a program to rewrite MCAS to alleviate all of those conditions that ultimately beset 2 unfortunate crews and the families and victims.
But Calhoun added that the embattled chief executive would have to deliver an operational 737 MAX fleet to successfully navigate this period.
He is going to experience in his first period one of the most difficult situations any CEO that I've ever known has lived through. So if he can get us from here to the end point, and the end point being a MAX that's flying in service and accepted by the flying public, and begins to restore our brand, I might argue he's just about the most qualified executive in the world to be running a company like Boeing.
Now, Boeing's new chief will inherit an array of challenges in what's set to be a critical year for the plane maker. CNBC's Phil LeBeau looks at how the aerospace giant aims to bounce back and regain the trust of airlines, travelers, and regulators.
Next year, Boeing's 737 MAX will have 3 critical moments. First, expect recertification early in 2020. The head of the FAA, Steve Dixon, has said he won't approve the MAX until he flies it himself. And there are still a number of hurdles to clear before the MAX takes off. But most believe it will be recertified in the first couple of months of next year. Once that happens, expect airlines to make a big push to convince flyers the MAX is safe. Southwest, American, and United have parked their MAX planes for almost a year. They know passengers may hesitate or flat out refuse to board a MAX. So executives of those airlines will be on MAX flights to reassure their customers the planes are good to go. Once the MAX is back, look for Boeing to slowly ramp up production. Yes, the assembly line will be down at the start of the year, but Boeing will likely go to building 42 a month by mid-year. What about the MAX airplanes that have been built but not yet delivered? They will eventually take off and go to the airlines that have ordered them. But it will take all of 2020 and beyond for Boeing to clear out the inventory of more than 400 MAX airplanes.
Meanwhile, Boeing's main European competitor, Airbus, has just wrapped up another sale. U.S. budget airline Spirit has finalized an agreement to buy 100 new airplanes from the aerospace giant. The deal includes a mixture of different models from the A320neo family, with options of purchasing up to 50 more. Delivery on the potentially $12 billion deal is expected through 2027. Airbus shares essentially flat on the morning. Karen.
We are closely monitoring a speech that Prime Minister Abe is giving in Chengdu in China. He has been holding a trilateral meeting with leaders of South Korea and China today. All this is aimed at further denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. But conversations have also been held between the leaders of Japan and South Korea. They have met for the first time in more than a year as they try to improve ties after one of the worst periods of tensions between the two countries in decades. Effectively, both have been trying to patch up ties after South Korea's Supreme Court last year ordered Japanese firms to compensate some South Koreans who were forced to work during Japan's 1910 to 45 colonial rule. So there's been tensions that date back many, many years, and we are seeing some movement on that front. Let's just listen into the conversation.
Our dialogue must continue, all the more because precisely there are issues and challenges. By continuing our ceaseless perpetual exchanges, we should live up to the expectations of our international community. That kind of a mature Japan-China relationship of a new era is what I wish to establish. Tomorrow, together with Premier Lee Ko-chan, I shall visit the World Heritage Site Dujiangyan. Under the backdrop of a magnificent site, I wish to discuss our bilateral issues, including the economic relations and a variety of challenges in this region by taking our time. As the new year starts, finally, after half a century, the Olympics and the Paralympics will return to Tokyo, Japan. The Pyeongchang Games in 2018 and then the Beijing Games to follow in 2022 by Japan, China and ROK hosting the Olympics and the Paralympics in a series. This region will attract an unprecedented level of interest and attention from across the world, leveraging these opportunities, sending out a powerful message for world peace and stability. I hope the Games will be such opportunities. There is only a week left until the end of this year. This year, we had a historic succession of the imperial throne after some 200 years. This year has given us hope for our future and has become a profound milestone as the start of the new era of Reiwa. May I wish that the new year next year, the second year of Reiwa, will be a wonderful year for all of you. Thank you for your attention.
Shinzo Abe there as he looks to restore relations with South Korea and also trying to repair relations with China too as the three countries try to battle threats with North Korea. In other news, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission reportedly suspects BMW of misreporting its sales figures. According to several media reports, the German car makers are alleged to have artificially boosted its numbers by having dealerships buy cars and register them as loaners. The dealers would then sell them off again as low-mileage used vehicles soon afterwards, a practice known in the industry as punching. BMW says it is cooperating with the SEC, but has refused to disclose details of the probe. Tesla CEO Elon Musk's dreams may have just come true after shares in the electric car maker reached an all-time high of $422. The stock closed near $419, bringing the automaker's market cap to more than $75 billion. The move comes more than a year after Musk tweeted he had, quote, funding secured to take the company private at $420, being the price tag sparking a scandal and SEC probe.
Retailers in 2019 struggled with closing stores and consumers migrating online, as well as external pressures on the markets. CNBC's Courtney Reagan takes a look at what's in store for the sector in 2020.
2019 was a difficult year for retail with clear winners and losers. Expect the divergence to continue in 2020. First, the tariff divide. While the country's tariff schedule continues to evolve, brands and retailers aren't waiting to adapt, and some will do so easier than others. Big retailers like Target, Walmart, and Best Buy use scale and influence to keep prices low for shoppers by insisting the brands they buy from take on whatever higher cost result. It will hurt smaller, less powerful players. Second, old is new again. As the retail resale market grows, watch for more retailers to experiment with new ways of selling merchandise secondhand. As Gen Z focuses on more sustainable shopping, watch for retailers to deploy new consignment options, giving old merchandise second life. And third, new CEOs, new strategies. Many retailers have or will have new CEOs settle in the new year, including Bed Bath & Beyond, Nike, Under Armour, Tapestry, and Gap. Investors wait to see if the new leaders will dramatically shift the strategies in new directions and then decide if they're willing to give them a chance to make change.
Joining us now to talk all things retail is Stacey Widlitz, who is president of SW Retail Advisors. And thank you for getting the theme of Christmas with us around the set today.
I feel like I should have worn green to mix things up a little bit.
I want to talk about store closings because on my high street around Notting Hill, which is one of the more premium spaces in the UK, there's been a huge amount of turnover, and that's very high-end properties to fairly mass market types of offerings. And the one theme that seems to be jumping out is pop-up shops and charity stores.
Yes.
So just talk us through the transition on the high street here in the UK.
Sure. I mean, we've seen thousands of store closings in the UK. We'll see almost 10,000 in the US this year. So that continues to be a huge pressure. But I think in the UK, it's a little bit different because not only are we seeing just general store closings and being overstored, but you also have the CVA process, which is the company voluntary arrangement. It's the alternative to bankruptcy where basically retailers can say to the landlords, hey, we want a 70% reduction in rent, which pressures the malls, the rent, and of course then the neighbors say, hey, we want this deal. So you got that pressure. You also have the business re-rating that we had for taxes for the retailer. So there's all this pressure external coming at them. And, there's just very little to offset it as the customer continues to transition online.
And how does this trend start to unfold in 2020? More of the same?
More store closings. So I think we are really just getting started. And I think in the UK, the store closings started much later than in the US, and we're probably really overdue. So I think going forward, we see continued closings, whether that's specialty, it's mass, more department stores. And even if you look in Germany, I would say that's probably the next market that's really incredibly overstored, where you have very undifferentiated retailers that are just starting to close down.
Karen and I were discussing earlier during this holiday period the sales that have been coming through, and it feels, anecdotally, that the sales have been pretty aggressive this year, and they've started earlier than in past years. I mean, how has the holiday season unfolded? Have retailers been under more pressure than perhaps they anticipated and then the market anticipated?
Sure. Well, I think it's interesting over the past, 5 to 10 years in the UK, you've seen kind of the Americanization come over here. And, it's all about Black Friday. And just like the US, that seems to creep earlier and earlier every year. So you can get these amazing bargains 10 days, 2 weeks before Black Friday, which, from a margin perspective is just a terrible decision for retailers. But if the neighbors do it, you have to do it. So I think that definitely the high street is feeling the pressure, and that's in direct response to it.
And part of Boris Johnson's plan under his new government is to reduce business rates in an effort to revive the UK high street. I guess first question, do you think he's actually going to deliver on these plans, and how effective will this change be if he does?
Well, I would hope so, because certainly the high street needs a break here. You know, if you think about it, some of the most expensive real estate out there, for example, Selfridges, when they re-rated their tax rates, it went from £10 million a year to 17. That's crazy. That's a crazy jump. And also, if you think about it, the online players, mostly their warehouses are out of town. They actually received over the past few years a reduction in their rates. So it's not only that the consumer is transitioning online, but the online players seem to be optically getting a tax break, while the brick and mortar guys that are within reach on the high street are getting just creamed by these business rates.
While it has been a tale of woe on the high street, there have been a couple of key outperformers on the stock market. It's quite stunning if you chart some of them, and you flagged up the names to us. Target, 94% higher year to date. Let's repeat that, 94% year to date. Nike, 34%. Lululemon, 87% higher. Moncler up 41%. What are these companies doing right?
So Target was our top pick in going into the year here. And, you know, what I saw early on is you went in and looked at their store renovations. It's simply amazing. You want to spend hours in a Target. So basically what they've done is they walked around and looked at Victoria's Secret, the workout market, and said, hey, who's doing the categories wrong? We're going to do it better. We're also going to respond to what the customer wants in terms of larger sizing, more inclusivity. They also have pick up in store, same day delivery. So they've really met the consumer where they want to be, and they have amazing private label product that's an incredible value for what it is.
You're making me homesick, Stacey.
I know. That we were just saying, the first thing I do when I go home is like go to Target and just walk around and, you know, say, this is everything I need. You know, they've got CVS, they've got healthcare, they've got amazing private label kids. So they are even doing like a little mini, it almost looks like a Sephora concept inside their store. So they just understand where the market is going and how the consumer wants to shop, and they're delivering it.
It's stretching to a department store model when department stores have not been successful at this point, but we can pick up that conversation in just a bit. It's just staying with us, Stacey.
All right, so let's take a look at European markets and see where things stand on Christmas Eve trading. We are looking at a fairly mixed picture, but modest moves overall. The FTSE 100 and the French CAC are both trading slightly in positive territory. Over in Spain, though, a slightly more negative picture, but no massive moves in either direction. Low volatility, low volumes today. Well, coming up on Street Signs, Santa skis, but will the slopes be smooth for investors next year, as some see better growth prospects on the horizon? We discuss reindeers and rallies after the break.
Thanks to you, he's smiling. Thanks to you.
These 40 short seconds are all it takes to enter your details into timetofine.com and locate the perfect Swiss watch. Browse and tell them which of the many thousands of watches you want to buy. They'll then put the word out to authorized retailers who'll let you know when they found it, usually within 24 hours. There's an optional concierge service too, and even a seasonal £50 off your first luxury Swiss watch purchase. Save precious time at timetofine.com. £50 off first order only. Terms and conditions apply.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. My favorite NBA Christmas memory is, I got to go with 2010 Heat Lakers. First year of the LeBron in Miami, going to the Staples Center against Kobe and the defending champion Lakers. Everything said the Lakers were going to win that game, but LeBron had a triple-double and blew out the Lakers. Search The Haber Show to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
With 2020 on the horizon,
TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2011, Osama bin Laden is captured and killed by U.S. Special Forces after a decade-long manhunt. In 2016, Donald Trump is elected the 45th president of the United States after securing 304 electoral votes over Hillary Clinton's 227. And in 2018, a UN report stating the world has 12 years to prevent irreversible climate change.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Positive but cautious sums up Citi Private Bank's Jeffrey Sachs' 2020 economic outlook. He explained to us why gradual improvement could be in the works next year.
It has been a reluctant rally on low volume, but we think there's further to go and it will be on bigger volume. Over the weekend, 2 bits of positive news. The first, the UK election means that there's now Brexit clarity. And secondly, the US-China trade agreement phase 1 is going to be positive for European exporters. But there were already positives for the European market. When you look at the economy, we have been noticing that the economic surprise index has been moving into positive territory. And that's usually an indicator of an upcoming strong market. Secondly, we've had signs of lending growth stabilizing, and we think will pick up next year on the back of the broad money supply growth. And we think that's going to feed through into earnings growth of approaching 10%, which is slightly above the global average. Then if you look
a big
at
jump from this year also.
Absolutely right.
I mean, you highlighted those positives there, but we can't ignore the fact that this morning we got more manufacturing data come through for Europe. In particular, in Germany, the manufacturing flash PMI weakened even further in December. Cyclicals have been a key beneficiary of the European equity rally that Jemana mentioned there. I mean, is it really fair to say that we are actually seeing signs of stabilization or even a turning point in manufacturing when we're getting numbers like this continue to come through?
Yes, we think it is fair. We look at the consumer, first of all, and they've been continuing to spend. Retail sales growth in Germany has been around 5% over the last few months. And then we look at the manufacturing side, which has been in recession now for 2 years. There's signs that inventories are about to be rebuilt. Then if we look further forward next year, if we get continued trade stabilization, then we're likely to get a capex pickup. So we think it's not going to be a V-shaped economic recovery, but a gradual improvement, supported, we think, also by ongoing ECB monetary easing and a better mix with increasing emphasis on fiscal spending.
A video game console under your Christmas tree? Apparently not. According to research firm, video game console shipments are expected to drop 13% this year. Josh Lipton explains.
This Christmas, there might not be as many video game consoles under the tree. Shipments are expected to total 37.5 million units in 2019. That's a nearly 13% drop. Lewis Ward, IDC's head of gaming, says Nintendo fans are still buying consoles, but Sony and Microsoft fans are putting off purchases because they know new ones are on the way. Both companies say their next-generation consoles will be available late next year. Gamers expect them to be faster with better graphics. So which one has the edge? Ward expects Sony to sell more new consoles than Microsoft because it boasts a bigger brand in more markets. But we can't know for sure, he says, until the companies unveil price points and games. The new consoles arrive at an interesting time for the industry. Analysts say mobile gaming continues to grow strongly, that there has been a resurgence in PC gaming, and there is the rise of game streaming services too, like Google Stadia, which for $10 a month allows fans to stream high-quality games to a PC, TV, and most Pixel phones. No pricey console needed. That's a potential long-term threat for the console industry, but it's one that companies are well aware of. In fact, Microsoft is launching its own game streaming technology next year, though it hasn't yet detailed price or an exact launch date. Josh Lipton, CNBC Business News, San Francisco.
Let's pick up our conversation around retail, staying with us. Stacey Widlitz, President of SW Retail Advisors. And Stacey, from digital disrupting video game consoles with more and more streaming, we are seeing digital disrupt the route to market for some of the big retailers. I thought Nike was a fascinating one this year because they launched subscription for kids' shoes. That was a different way of getting to the customer. So as we ponder what's going to kill Amazon over the next couple of years, it feels as though maybe it's going to be a bunch of things, and maybe it's going to be companies like Nike changing the way they engage with customers.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And what we've seen over the past few years, a lot of the brands have kind of like waved the white flag and said, fine, we're going to sell on Amazon. We just give up. Nike has tested it and gone the other direction and said, listen, no, we are only going to sell our product in differentiated wholesale channels, and they don't categorize Amazon as one of those buckets. So I think you may see over the next year or so more brands being bold and saying, you know what, we're going to pull back because we want to control our message, we want to control our promotional pricing. We've seen that over the past several years in general with brands looking at the wholesale channel and saying, you're not a good partner, we're going to go more direct. It's higher margin and we can control our pricing.
I understand that. There's fantastic experiences, I think, when you engage directly with the brand. But where it all seems to come crashing down, the delivery side, where you don't have the Amazon experience. The Amazon drivers have an ability to get through the front door with the product, and they're waiting for you the next day.
Sure.
Other firms, there's this constant, your delivery is being delayed, we haven't got your details correct, so we're going to try and redeliver it today. It's an endless story. So how do companies, retailers, try and close that gap on the delivery side with Amazon?
I think Target again is a great example, and Walmart also. So they're doing same day pickup. So they're encouraging the consumer, book it online, come to the store and get it same day. And amazingly, more than half of the digital sales at Target are being transacted that way, or they're doing same day delivery through a partner like Shipt. So some retailers are starting to get it right. Also, they're just using partners in some cases, and even Amazon is doing this. They're partnering with Kohl's, so you can bring in your returns there. So there's different distribution points that everybody's trying to use to be more effective and also to reduce costs so that you don't have to deliver it to the home.
Thank you so much for joining us, and Merry Christmas
to see you. Merry Christmas.
Stacey Widlitz with us, President, SW Retail Advisors.
All right, well, coming up on the show, how the Russian government is responding after the U.S. imposed sanctions against one of its pipelines. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev's comment after the break.
Everybody has a visor in their car, but a visor in the wrong place.
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery's running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
The Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say,
What Does the Fox Say,
and of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is attached.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Habershow podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. I wanted to start an NBA podcast because I wanted to take you behind the scenes and hear it from the people that make the NBA tick. It's the most intimate platform for the most intimate sport, and podcasts are the perfect medium to capture that intimacy. Search The Haber Show to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net. Scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
To the
it.
sideline, the man fleet for three.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA Today to start listening.
Welcome back to Street Signs. I'm Juliana Tattlebaum.
And I'm Karen Cho. These are your headlines. A stocking stuffer for investors, the Dow jumps nearly 100 points to another record high, with Wall Street poised to ride a Santa rally into Christmas, but European markets failed to join the ride.
Boeing ousts CEO Dennis Muhlenberg a week after halting production of its troubled 737 MAX jet, with board member David Calhoun set to take the top job in January.
A lump of coal for BMW this year as the German car maker confirms it's under investigation by the Securities and Exchange Commission, reportedly over its US sales reporting.
And Russian defiance on Nord Stream 2. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev vows the gas pipeline will be done in a couple of months, saying there's nothing catastrophic about US sanctions on the project. All right, well, let's take a look at where the Forex markets stand as we enter the final days of trade in 2019. The euro, a slight touch light versus the dollar this morning, around 110.80, but really low volatility for that currency pair. Sterling, another one worth taking a look at as we close out the year. It has dropped further this morning, around 5 basis points, down below that 130 mark. And of course, less than 2 weeks ago, we were up at 135 in the immediate aftermath of the UK general election results. Now that we have some clarity on at least the next month or so when it comes to Brexit, currency traders have taken some profits on the currency as we look ahead to the next 12 months and what negotiations on the trade front will look like between the UK and the EU and the UK and the US. Well, let's take a look at U.S. futures. We are now entering the Santa Claus rally period. We are in for a positive start to trade in the U.S. according to those implied futures there. The S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ all looking at a positive start to trade today. And this, of course, is in stark contrast to where we stood 1 year ago when the Dow lost 650 points on Christmas Eve 2018. Now, Congress is stuck in a stalemate after the U.S. House voted last week to impeach President Trump. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and Majority Leader Mitch McConnell are at odds. The Democratic leader released a list of documents he believes are needed for a fair impeachment trial, while his Republican counterpart told Fox News that they're at an impasse until Pelosi sends the papers. NBC's Hallie Jackson has the latest on the standoff.
A holiday hold on impeachment proceedings as key leaders dig in today.
We can't take up a matter we don't have. And so hopefully they'll be on the way over at some point.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell waiting on House Speaker Nancy Pelosi to send him those 2 articles of impeachment so a Senate trial can begin. But Pelosi today insists she won't take the next step in the process until we know what sort of trial the Senate will conduct. The president tonight on Twitter responding she is trying to take over the Senate and Crying Chuck is trying to take over the trial. No way. But Democrats say they just want what's fair, with Senator Chuck Schumer today making the case in a new letter to colleagues, pushing not just for witnesses in a trial, like Acting Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney and former National Security Advisor John Bolton, but documents, too, about the president's request for investigations in Ukraine that could have helped him politically, even as military aid to the country was on hold.
We say to President Trump, release the emails, let your aides testify. We say to Leader McConnell, a fair trial with the facts. Only the facts.
In other news, the Queen will make a plea for harmony and reconciliation in her Christmas speech this year as the UK looks to heal its political divisions. The UK is on course to leave the EU following Prime Minister Boris Johnson's landslide election win. However, that appears to have reawakened the movement for Scottish independence. Elsewhere, the Queen's husband, Prince Philip, was seen leaving the hospital this morning. The 98-year-old was hospitalised on Friday for a pre-existing condition, according to the palace. Hopes of an end to the Brexit saga have risen with the decisive UK general election. However, markets are still pricing in some uncertainty on the matter going into 2020. Macro Hive's Bilal Hafiz clued us into the UK headwinds we cannot overlook.
One of the reasons I flagged this as a risk that we're so focused on Brexit, there are other potential shocks and crises in the UK. Already, academics across the UK are on strike, because of pensions. One of the issues is because interest rates are so low, people's pensions that they will receive will be much lower than previously expected. At the moment, people will receive around a quarter of their earnings that they had before in their pensions. And you have to remember, around 40% of the population of the UK is above the age of 50. So this is an issue that a significant proportion of the population will face. And of course, many of them voted for the Conservative Party and said there'll be high expectations that something is done for that. And this is the challenge for the Bank of England. Keep rates low, you create a pension problem, but you help investment. So which one do you optimize for?
Nothing catastrophic. That's how the Russian government has called the new US sanctions against Nord Stream 2. Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev says the gas pipeline will be completed in a couple of months, despite President Trump imposing sanctions on the project. Samuel Green is director of the Russia Institute at King's College London. He joins us on the phone from just outside of London. Samuel, let me ask you about these sanctions. Are they a little bit late to the party with these restrictions now on those involved in the build-out of the pipeline?
Well, they are. It's something, obviously, that Washington has been talking about for a while, trying to put pressure, really, I think, more on the Germans than anybody else. And I really do think that, at least in this case, when it comes to Russia sanctions, that Washington's heart really isn't in it. This does, to me, look more as though it's aimed at trying to get a little bit more American LNG onto the European market than it is at trying to disrupt anything like Russian influence on the continent.
Let's talk about Germany, because you've highlighted to us the difficult position it is in terms of maintaining relations with Russia, but also with key allies, including the United States.
Well, that's true. I mean, I think Berlin, to a certain extent, has painted itself into a corner. Obviously, it does not want to make its relationship with the U.S. any worse than it already is. But at the same time, it really sees the importance of having a long-term positive relationship with Russia, and that means keeping channels and pipelines, as it were, open. And so it sees some strategic interest in having this pipeline built, in maintaining this relationship with Moscow in order to be able to achieve other things down the road, whether that's a broader security and economic relationship for Europe, or whether that's resolving issues in Ukraine, or what have you.
Now, Samuel, you say that this is really more about increasing leverage vis-a-vis Berlin and Brussels than it is about punishing Moscow from the U.S. perspective. But we've heard now from the Kremlin that they're not going to stand by and just watch these U.S. sanctions unfold without taking action. So, I mean, what are the chances that this has unintended consequences for the U.S. from Russia?
Well, for Russia, I mean, I think, look, Russia has put itself in a position where it can continue to pursue the projects that are important to it. It has a strong fiscal position and has the wherewithal to go ahead with key projects like Nord Stream 2. So they will be able to continue with this. The question really is what prices is Germany willing to pay? And I think that the danger for Washington really is in driving a greater wedge between itself and its European allies. Right. One of the things that makes sanctions work is the degree to which foreign trade and investment around the world runs through the dollar one way or another. That creates vulnerabilities for German companies that might be, as it were, sanctions busting in order to pursue what is the German government's policy on Nord Stream 2. Right. So does that mean that countries like Germany, staunch allies of the U.S., now have a incentive to find ways of working maybe without the dollar, and thus undermining American power in the long run?
Interesting long-term questions to ask there about alliances. Now, one alliance that has gotten a lot of focus over the last year in the wake of the U.S.-China trade war is the relationship between China and Russia. I mean, how does this relationship stack up strategically relative to the relationship between Russia and Europe? I mean, is it fair to say that the Russia or European relationship far outweighs any kind of partnership that we've seen develop between Russia and China?
I mean, it does. It has strategically and historically been Russia's key relationship with in terms of trade and investment. And China obviously matters, right? If you were in Russia's geostrategic and geopolitical position, you would want to be trading robustly with both Europe and China, right, given where it sits. But China does not want to be overly dependent on hydrocarbons exports from Russia. It will drive very hard bargains on those things, but also the geology and geography matter, right? So the oil and the gas, particularly the gas that goes from Russia to Europe, right, cannot simply be switched around and moved to the other side of the country and sent to China, right? So the idea that this is something of a trade-off is a bit of a falsehood.
Samuel, I want to talk about the three countries, but in a slightly different context, because this pipeline project was set for completion by the end of 2020, which puts us right bang in the middle of a US election cycle. We have seen phase one of a trade deal be a very positive catalyst for markets and something positive for Trump at this point. I do wonder whether in an election year we see a president switch focus from China to Russia in terms of increased rhetoric, and perhaps this is just part of that conversation at this point.
Look, it's entirely possible. I think that anybody trying to predict how Trump is going to run his election campaign is pursuing a bit of a fool's errand. He works on being unpredictable. But, I think in general, if we look at how the administration has treated these countries in the past few years, right? They have spent much more time being angry at China and being angry at Germany and Europe in general than they have being angry at Russia. So I would probably expect that to continue.
Samuel, very much appreciate the time on Christmas Eve today. Thank you so much for joining us. Samuel Green, Director, Russia Institute and Reader of Russian Politics at the King's College, London. A question, what do emerging markets have to offer in 2020? Aberdeen Standard Investments' Jerry Fowler breaks down what investors are getting wrong about emerging markets.
Active management is having a comeback. Global investors typically still treat emerging markets as a block. And even worse at the moment, the block between debt and equity has changed substantially. Equities are primarily 70% Asian equities in the emerging market index now. So Brazil you don't notice it in emerging market performance because it's quite small. And yet it was very good, partly because they're having a consumer credit cycle that's quite strong. It's not industrial, it's not exports, it's consumer. A lot of leverage. It's been supported by a weak currency because they've got weak externalities. So it has done very well. We did have a short position on Brazil in previous years, and we took that off because this recovery was coming through. So making sure you've got managers and positions in funds that you're invested in that are taking active, granular positions, I think is really important for 2020 because of exactly that sort of situation.
We're going to squeeze in a short break, but coming up on Street Signs, the trade war dominated much of 2019, and that is set to continue in 2020. An expert weighs in on what you should expect.
Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop. Not on our watch. In real life, you can fill your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We heart in real life. Brent Cross, London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Ho, 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 who's
made a list this year. I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2016, when Tennessee quarterback Josh Dobbs throws a Hail Mary to the end zone as time expires against Georgia.
4 seconds to go. Dobbs drops back, looks, loads up, fires long for the end zone. The pass is going to be caught by Tennessee.
Tennessee wins!
Caught it by Tennessee. Jawan Jennings makes the catch in the end zone on the Hail Mary.
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Welcome back to Street Signs. Well, we've been discussing various asset classes and their performance over the last decade. Let's now turn our attention to bond markets, the U.S. 10-year in particular. As you can see here, we're currently trading just under the 2% mark at 1.92%. That is down from 3.42% on January 1st, 2010. So a major step lower, as you can see here. And of course, for 2019, just bringing it a little bit closer to home, of course, a huge driver of markets across the globe have been the Fed's pivot back in January, turning from, at the end of 2018, a very hawkish stance to then cutting 3 times over the course of the year, and that has driven yields lower, the 10-year now trading at that 1.92% mark. Let's take a look at commodity markets next, pushing on to Brent. It has been a volatile period over the last decade or so for crude. You can see the major step down that came in 2014. Now this year we've seen Brent lose about 20%, just about 18% to be exact. Now we're trading around $66 a barrel. Shifting gears, let's take a look at gold over the decade. So we've seen, again, a little bit of a mixed picture for gold. This year, we have seen gold benefit from some of that safe haven demand that came through, in particular when we saw periods of escalation in tensions between the U.S. and China. Gold proved to be a key beneficiary of that, and you can see it in the rise up you've seen here. But putting it all together, the gains we've seen in gold, modest in comparison to what we've seen in stocks. Gold is up about 35% over the 10-year period, and that compares to equities in the U.S., which are up nearly 200% over the same period. So in context, gold, an underperformer relative to stock markets over the last decade. Karen.
Julian, a few stories have moved the markets in 2019, like the U.S.-China trade war. The two parties have now finalized the long-anticipated Phase 1 deal, but a full resolution is a long way off. Here's what to expect from the trade war in 2020.
The Trump administration rocked the trade boat in 2019 with unpredictable tariffs and short-lived truces. In 2020, international trade will move back toward the status quo. First, China tensions return to a simmer. Fireworks will fade when the U.S. and China sign off on a Phase 1 deal in early January. A second deal will remain far off, but if China engages on and enforces this first deal, expect tariffs to be rolled back slowly. Second, farm finances will be in focus. As planting season gets underway, American farmers will size up the pain of a 2-year trade war and a salve of new business with China, Mexico, Canada, and Japan. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue says more financial aid will be warranted if the ag economy doesn't rebound quickly. Third, Europe will be back in the crosshairs. As President Trump eyes re-election, he'll home in on a new target, the EU. With rising tariffs on luxury goods, the president's stump speeches will be testing ground for new material on auto tariffs and energy sanctions. But he'll pocket those fights until after November.
A phase one trade deal may be on the horizon. However, TS Lombard's Charles Dumas believes the long-term effects of the superpowers' competition for supremacy could loom over global markets for a time to come.
Our concern is that what we're looking at here is a long-term contest for primacy in the world economy and arguably geopolitics down the road. And as a result of that contest, you have to assume, therefore, that the trouble will resume after the elections next year.
I don't wish to minimize the question, but you clearly raise it as some sort of a contest between the two very large superpowers, economic powers in the world. Who will end up winning this, and what is the definition of winning that contest?
Well, I'm not sure who's going to win it, and I'm not sure that winning is something that can be achieved, because they're both major countries, and in the absence of some sort of war or conquest, one has to assume that they will continue to be massive economies for the next, let's say, 10 years. So for practical purposes, as far as the eye can see, no one's going to win. It's just that there will be this competition.
Does that mean that we're going to see, a splintering? We were talking to our previous guest, Brunello, about the concept of splinter net, and we know that the U.S. is very concerned about China's push into 5G and other industries of the future, and the national security threat that the U.S. insists it poses. So, do you think we're going to just continue to see this divergence when it comes to technology and the separation between China and the U.S.?
I wouldn't be at all surprised by continued divergence, yes. And we think that the world is going to devolve to some degree from full globalization, so to speak, that we've had for 30 years since the fall of since the end of the Cold War, to something more like regional blocks. And of course that does contain the possibility that you've just mentioned, that a splinter net, as you call it, which is a clever phrase. It obviously will be suboptimal.
Jeff Henriksen, CEO and founder of Thorpe Abbott's Capital, joins us now on the phone. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, Jeff. Now, just looking through your latest commentary, the key for you seems to be worker productivity. This has come up as a topic earlier this morning as well, and the divergence we've seen in terms of U.S. worker productivity compared to the rest of the world. What do you think 2020 has in store? Is it going to be a good year for worker productivity in the U.S., and is this going to enable continued success of U.S. markets?
Oh, well, hey, guys. Let me just say it's great to be with you this morning, and happy holidays to you. I think, productivity growth is obviously a big driver of what moves economies. But, with regards to the next year and the trade deal with China, I think, for markets anyway, the real question you need to ask yourself is, will we see an improvement beyond, what the market is currently discounting? And, I think it's safe to say that we're discounting a phase one deal at the moment. So the real question is, will we see improvement upon that phase one deal? And so, at a high level, I think anytime you're trying to unpack this, kind of larger political question, it's really important to kind of look at the incentives of the parties involved. And, I guess the question on the U.S. side is President Trump comfortable that a, phase one deal with China gets him the economic result, he needs to win re-election? And I think the answer is far from clear. So I think there will be motivation both for Trump and for President Xi to keep moving forward to try to improve this deal. So I would say that we are more optimistic, probably than most, that we actually will get a incremental benefit to what we've seen already.
What does this mean in terms of markets then for 2020? What kind of upside are you anticipating, and where should investors be looking to put their money?
Well, generally speaking, I think market calls are, it's tough to make long-term calls or relatively short-term calls on markets simply because there's just so much randomness that we can't in any way predict. But I think it's good to maybe kind of look at both sides of the argument. So on the one hand, stocks look expensive, right? Coming into 2019, we had just experienced, a big downward adjustment to expectations of future growth. I think the forward multiple on the S&P coming into this year was something, I think it got sub 15, if I remember correctly, which makes for a much easier investment environment. So, if you kind of look at the results we've had this year, earnings estimates have been kind of flattish. So most of the return we've seen, kind of just under 30%, has been driven by, multiple expansion. So there are a lot of people that say, well, we need earnings growth to continue for the market to continue to do well. I don't know if I necessarily believe that. I mean, I think I understand that argument, but I just think given that we have extremely low interest rates relative to history, you have something like I think it was 17 trillion, now it's like 11 or 12 trillion of negative yielding assets globally. I mean, what's the right multiple for stocks in that environment? And I think a lot of people that are kind of more bearish on their market outlook are looking at it and saying something to the effect of, well, we're going to mean revert back to maybe a 16, 17 times forward multiple on the S&P, kind of below where we are now, which I think is just sub 19 times.
Jeff,
I don't know if that's right.
Jeff, let me switch focus to Alphabet. This is a company you've been looking at. Performance this year, 29% higher, keeping track with the rest of the market. But we have seen a change at the helm as Sundar Pichai effectively entrenches his control over the whole company at this point. Huge stock options, too, if he is successful over the next 3 years. How do you weigh up the chances of Alphabet being a winner?
I mean, so we're very bullish on Alphabet. I would say this, though. I think, it's not enough to just look at Alphabet and say, okay, well, it's a digital ad powerhouse, high returns on capital, high growth, wide moat. I mean, all of those are true, but I don't think it's the extent of the analysis required. You really have to look at how the sausage is made, so to speak. And so to do that, you really need to understand how they create value for their customers, what actions do they take. And for Google, it's the ability to generate extremely highly focused targeted ads that earn, high ROI on ad dollars spent.
Jeff, we've got to go. Thank you so much, Jeff. Jeff Hendrickson with us, CEO and founder of Thought Babbitt's Capital with us. And that is all for Street Science today from Juliana and myself. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you.
A lot of folks ask me why their dishwasher doesn't get everything clean.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
On a morning that could herald the darkest of days, one man is running late, like proper late. Starring Kevin Davis in his one-man race against the McDonald's 10:30 breakfast deadline.
I'll stop you there, mate. Breakfast's now served until 11 a.m, so there's no rush, no drama.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12th 19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Whether you call yourself a Democrat, Republican, Independent, or something else, the road to 2020 is on TuneIn.
What a night! And a complete earthquake. This was
Follow every step of the Democratic primaries while hearing the latest headlines from the White House with live 24-hour news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and more.
We're closing in on the first results in the battle for the White House.
Experience the election through the sources you trust with the nonstop news channels on TuneIn.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn. What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project, a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently.
Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words.
Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out.
5 at 5 on this Christmas Eve. Coming down the chimney. Investors hoping for another Santa Claus rally as stocks push further into record territory. Fallout over at Boeing. Investors and suppliers reacting to a change at the top of the embattled defense giant. Under investigation, one of Europe's top automakers seeing new scrutiny from the United States SEC. Sacrificing safety for speed. A new investigation sheds light on a reportedly systemic problem for Amazon's massive delivery network. And then ending 2019 on a high note, what shares of Tesla are doing for the first time in history. All of that as Worldwide Exchange begins right now. You in today for Brian Sullivan. Let's talk about what stocks are doing right now on this abbreviated trading day for the S&P 500 and the Dow and everybody else. Take a look at what's happening here. The Dow Jones up by another 17 points if these futures gains hold into the opening bell. The S&P up by 1, the Nasdaq up by just around 7. Now the S&P looks to lock in its best annual performance since 1997. Markets are closing at 1 p.m. Eastern time. They will remain closed through Christmas Day, picking up again for a full day of trading on Thursday. Today also kicks off the first day of the official Santa Claus rally period, which happens on the final 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year, as you can see here. Now, the S&P has posted about a 1.3% gain on average since 1950 in those spans, so keep an eye on that. In the last 10 years, the market's only posted 2 losing Santa Claus sessions, as you can see here, 2013 and 2014 for those down days over here. So the Santa Claus rally, a powerful force in markets systemically for the overall system. Now, let's go worldwide to see what's happening with the trade. As you can see, in Asia right now, a fairly mixed session. The Nikkei in Japan just about flat. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong down about 0.1%. And of course, what's happening now with the Shanghai Composite up about 2/3%. Now let's take a look at what's going on around in Europe. You can see, let's swing that globe around there. Generally positive. Now, a lot of at least moves that we've seen here. There are key markets that are closed in Europe so far, but the CAC in France just about flat. The FTSE 100 about flat, and the German DAX off 0.1%. Let's get a look at some of the other top stories that we are following this morning. New today, BMW says it's being investigated by the Securities and Exchange Commission following a report of a probe into the company's sales practices. The European auto giant says it is fully cooperating with that investigation. Taking a look at shares in early European trading for BMW, you can see those moves affecting it just about 1% to the downside there. A win for ride-hailing giants Uber and Lyft. A New York state judge ruling in favor of those companies in a lawsuit against New York City, striking down a proposed rule limiting how much time drivers can spend on the streets south of 96th Street in Manhattan without passengers actually in the car. The judge calling the rule arbitrary and capricious. Uber shares unchanged pre-market, Lyft shares just about 0.1% to the upside. And then TikTok parent company ByteDance is responding to a report. It is planning on selling part or all of its stake in the app over U.S. security concerns. Bloomberg had originally reported the company was considering options from a major legal defense to an all-out sale in response to increased U.S. scrutiny. A sale of half of the business could have reportedly raised up to $10 billion. So the company at least throwing some cold water on that story for the time being. We'll see what happens. Now, what a difference a year makes. Since hitting a closing low just 12 months ago today on Christmas Eve in 2018, the U.S. markets, as you can see there, have rebounded and then some. Check out the major averages. The NASDAQ leading the way, up 44% in the past year, while the S&P 500 has gained about 37% during that time span, and the Dow is up 31%. So if you pick that bottom on the Christmas Eve low last year, you've done pretty darn well. Now, all 11 sectors of the S&P 500 are up by double digits, led first by technology, which has posted a gain of, get this, 58%. Now, the weakest sector in terms of returns, energy, which is up a mere 13%. So you're still doing pretty well there on the energy side of things as well. Now, within technology, it's been the semiconductors specifically powering the way back. The VanEck Vector Semiconductor ETF, you can see they're up about 0.2% pre-market. But check this out. Over the last 12 months, we're talking about near 76% returns for the semiconductor stocks. Now, all of that happening, of course, amid the U.S.-China trade war. This particular industry has become a big proxy for that U.S.-China trade discussion. Joining me now is Rob Morgan, Chief Investment Officer over at Sethi Financial. Rob, we've laid out all of the hits, runs, and errors for the past 12 months. We can all remember that bottoming happening out on Christmas Eve, of course, in hindsight. Take us through what's been the most significant development in markets in 2019 in your mind as we take stock of this past year.
Well, hey, good morning, Dom. Yes, it's certainly been a great year. I think probably the most significant change has been called Fed pivot. You know, as we entered this year, the Fed was still in rate hike mode, and quickly the Fed shifted to rate cut mode and cut rates 3 times. So I think really that has obviously generated a lot of positive momentum for equities. At the same time, if some people might say that that's been the only reason equities have done well this year, and I disagree with that. I think earnings have been solid, not great, but solid. So there are some good underpinnings to equities right now. But the Fed pivot certainly, in my mind, the big reason why we've had such a good year.
All right. So if the Fed was that critical, why is it that the markets, even before that fourth quarter of last year, continued to head higher, despite the fact that the Fed had raised interest rates multiple times over the course of the past couple of years?
Well, I think part of that is the fact that the expectation for earnings growth were still pretty good at the end of 2018. And so we did get some positive momentum related to that. Because at the end of the day, in the long run, you know, equity price performance, equity price growth is going to follow earnings growth. Now, 2019 was you know, a decent year for earnings, not great. But that still did not, the fact that it wasn't a great year for earnings didn't cause the equity markets to drop significantly.
All right, so my job is to lay out what happened from a historical news perspective. Your job, Rob, is the harder one, is to tell us what's going to happen in 2020, because that's what you get paid to do. So what is going to happen in 2020? What are the predominant themes that will play out? Should I still be invested in the market, and if so, where?
Yeah, Dom, I still like stocks here going into 2020, and of course a lot of clients are saying, but Rob, we've seen such a run up, but you know, back to earnings again and PE ratios, you know, stocks really aren't wildly overvalued here, and earnings growth should pick up and reaccelerate next year. I mentioned kind of the tepid earnings year we had this year. Well, that creates a low bar for earnings next year. So I like stocks. As far as kind of macro sectors, you know, even though the Fed's on a pause, I think their next move probably will be down, so that probably will bring the dollar, or you know, be a force to move the dollar down, which should help large cap multinationals. So I'd overweight big cap growth stocks here. For U.S. investors, I'd also overweight the international space. And if you like, we can kind of break down the S&P sectors I like and don't like.
I wish we had the time. I always do, Rob, but we're running out of it. But I thank you very much for all of those thoughts. We'll have to catch up with you again down the line. In the meantime, Rob, thank you very much. Merry Christmas, happy holidays. We'll see you soon.
In light of easing trade tensions, a Fed that's clearly on the sidelines.
All right, when we come back on the show, speed over safety. A new investigation shines light on Amazon's ever-expanding delivery network, plus how Tesla is ending 2019 on a high note. Explain what that means. And later on, despite the struggles of Uber, Lyft, and the debacle that was WeWork, IPOs are set to lock in a record-breaking year. All those details when Worldwide Exchange returns right after this.
You don't think it's prudent? I mean, look, Stephanie Link is
'Tis the season to be hunched over your laptop, not on our watch. In real life, you can feel your senses and your baskets. Feel all the sights, sounds, lols, and OMGs. Wear laughing emojis on actual smiley faces. Battery is running low. Take the kids to Santa's Grotto. In real life, you can find just the right present using the most advanced search engine in the world. Your eyes. We hunt in real life. Brent Cross London. Free parking for all sleighs and cars.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
19p? What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes to Panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots, or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2010, the passing of the Affordable Care Act brings Obamacare to millions of uninsured Americans. In 2015, a ruling by Supreme Court legalizes same-sex marriage across the country. And in 2018, millions of students skip school to protest for stronger gun control in the March for Our Lives.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium, from regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade. The 2010s saw yet another revolution in the way we listen to music. Music fans giving up CDs and digital downloads for streaming services and internet radio like TuneIn. At the same time, vinyl sales continue to rise to levels not seen since the format's original decline. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
All right, some festive music for our festive friends out in Chicago, Illinois. What you're seeing there is a live shot out in Chicago, 4:12 a.m. Central Time out there in the Windy City. It's significantly colder there than it is in New York right now. Well, a new report details how Amazon may be sacrificing safety for speed as it tries to deliver packages to all your friends and family members in time for Christmas. Rahel Solomon joins us now with that story, and this is fairly scathing with regard to what Amazon has been doing to try to get all those packages out.
And that's putting it nicely. So Amazon, of course, has been making a concentrated push over the past few years to grow its own delivery network. The company now delivers about half of its own packages using more Amazon-branded vans and trucks instead of UPS or the U.S. Postal Service. Well, a report by ProPublica and BuzzFeed details how Amazon has prioritized speed at the expense of safety, allegedly. Citing internal documents, the report says that new drivers were put to work immediately instead of being given a 5-day defensive driving course proposed by managers ahead of last year's holiday season. Amazon chose not to go ahead with that training. A memo says that it would have created a, quote, bottleneck in keeping drivers from working. A separate proposal in 2013 would have given drivers longer rest breaks and capped the number of packages delivered per route. That measure would have added an estimated cost of about 4 cents per package, but that was rejected by Amazon executive Dave Clark, who is now Senior Vice President of Operations. In a statement, Amazon calls the report an attempt to push a preconceived narrative that is simply untrue and says that nothing is more important to us than safety. Amazon says it provided more than 1 million hours of safety training to U.S. employees and contractors last year. It doesn't, however, say how many people received that training. So we did say that in 2019, they delivered about half of their own packages. Frank Holland did a report last week saying that in 2020, they expect that to increase to about 70%. So the allegations are pretty damning.
and they're expected to grow even larger next year and the years to come as well.
I mean, this is a focus just because everybody is so tuned in on shipping right now, given the shipping wars and everything else. But it's going to be that kind of behavior becomes more prevalent or alters in the coming months and years as, like you said, Amazon becomes much more of its own shipping force, competing with the likes of FedEx or the Postal Service or UPS or anybody else out there.
And one thing that the report said that for liability reasons, Amazon uses sort of contractors, right, to largely deliver these products. Well, who faces the liability when fatalities happen and when accidents happen? And that's one of the big concerns.
It's always going to be a huge issue for sure for many of these companies. Thank you very much, Rahel, for that update on Amazon. Well, still on deck for the show, just in time for the holidays, a new ranking of the rudest cities in America.
Today's big number, 145,000. That's how many of Boeing 737 MAX flights have been canceled through June of 2020.
How's work? If you're not loving your job and you're getting those Sunday blues, now's the time to make a change. With a LinkedIn app, it's now easier to find and land the job meant for you. There are millions of jobs on offer, and the LinkedIn app helps you hear about them first. Research shows applying within the first 10 minutes increases your chances of hearing back by up to 4 times. Stay in the know and grow your career. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
Sean McCoy has an opening on the right side, plunges into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
All right, it is 5:17 a.m. Eastern Time. That's a live shot of our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. on this Christmas Eve. It's been a big year for Washington, D.C. and lawmakers in 2019. We'll see if that continues in 2020 with the election year. Welcome back to Worldwide Exchange. Tesla is kicking off the week, surging to all-time highs, breaking above the infamous $420 level for the first time. CEO Elon Musk weighing in on Twitter, "Whoa, the stock is so high, LOL." The milestone comes 16 months after Musk tweeted that he had secured funding to take that company private at the 420 level. But the electric automaker is far from the only story in the industry spotlight heading into the next year. Phil LeBeau has your playbook for the auto market in 2020.
Next year is a huge one for Tesla and its investors as Model Y deliveries begin. And it could rack up big sales for 2 reasons. First, crossover utility vehicles are in demand. Second, Tesla will build the Model Y at its plant in China. And China is the world's largest market for electric vehicles. Meanwhile, you can tap the brakes expecting much from self-driving cars next year. Yes, companies like Waymo and Cruise are making progress when it comes to autonomous vehicles, but the technology still has a ways to go. Bottom line, you won't see a lot of autonomous vehicles on the road in 2020. But what you should see next year are strong truck and SUV sales. Americans are still buying these bigger models at a near record pace. Yes, they are paying more for those vehicles, and that is expected to continue. But as long as unemployment remains low and consumer confidence remains high, there will be plenty of demand for trucks, SUVs, and crossovers, which now account for 2/3 of the new vehicles sold in the U.S.
All right, our thanks to Phil LeBeau for that look at the auto market and what you can expect in the year 2020. Straight ahead on this show, this weekend may have seen the largest single shopping day in U.S. history, but our next guest says these retailers are missing out on the holiday rush. And then later on, the bank stocks our next guest says are a buy after a lackluster 2019. All that and more when Worldwide Exchange returns after this.
Run, run, Rudolph, Santa's gotta make it to town.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Still searching for the perfect Christmas gift? At Debenhams, discover our great range of fragrance offers from your favourite brands, including half-price fragrances from Marc Jacobs, Calvin Klein and Hugo Boss. There's something for everyone on your Christmas list. In-store now. Offer ends 24th December. See Debenhams.com for full terms and conditions.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
Ho, ho, ho. Want to make Santa's job a whole lot easier this year? TuneIn Premium is the gift your loved ones can enjoy all year long. Featuring commercial-free news from MSNBC, Fox News Talk, and CNBC.
Global concerns about climate change not
the most generous state in the U.S. on GoFundMe is...
Plus, commercial-free music and live sports. TuneIn Premium brings the best in audio to you. Forget the stocking and stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Happy holidays. Search Premium to start your free trial.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game and your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Welcome back to the show. Let's get a check on this morning's other top headlines outside the world of business. NBC's Philip Mena live in the New York newsroom with the latest. Good morning and Merry Christmas Eve, Philip.
Merry Christmas Eve to you too, Dom, and good morning. A holiday headache for travelers out there this Christmas Eve. Out west, drivers got stuck on a snow-covered mountain in Northern California. And in the Northeast, things got off to a bad start for drivers there. They were hit with up to 8 inches of rain, which, of course, caused some serious delays. Britain's Prince Philip is heading home just in time for the Christmas holiday. He was discharged from the hospital this morning after undergoing treatment for a pre-existing condition. The 98-year-old left the hospital just before 9 a.m. London time to return home to the Queen and his royal family. And astronauts aboard the International Space Station are already celebrating Christmas. On Monday, they opened their holiday care packages, which were filled with Santa hats, stockings, and even some special Christmas treats. Their floating holiday dinner consisted of smoked salmon and dehydrated fruitcake. And they washed it all down with pouches filled with apple cider and cocoa. The crew even reportedly has plans to dim the lights and watch how the Grinch stole Christmas. How about that? All while traveling at 5 miles per second. Dom, back to you. Merry Christmas.
I don't know about fruitcake. I'm not sure how dehydrated fruitcake is supposed to taste, Philip, but we do know they'll get a good view of Santa coming around the world for all those kids.
There it is. Perfect point.
Happy holidays. Enjoy the time off, Philip.
Thanks.
Well, still to come on the show, breaking out the retail nice list and the naughty list and the 2020 stocking stuffers for your portfolio, plus putting the cookies and the milk out early as Wall Street looks for another St. Nick rally. All of that when Worldwide Exchange returns right after this.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
I'm about to say two words that will make
the Honda Jazz, the car that feels fabulously small on the outside, yet deceptively big on the inside, with its incredible storage solutions and magic folding seats. Not to mention the suite of advanced safety features. And now with the small but big Jazz event, it's available with 0% APR representative and 5 years complimentary servicing until January 31st. Visit your local dealer to find out more. Honda dealers are credit brokers, not lenders. Finance provided by Honda Finance Europe, authorized and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Terms and conditions apply.
On a morning that could herald the darkest of days, one man is running late, like proper late. Starring Kevin Davis in his one-man race against the McDonald's 10:30 breakfast deadline.
I'll stop you there, mate. Breakfast's now served until 11 a.m, so there's no rush, no drama.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12th 19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
19p? What will that get you at Christmas? 5 minutes to Panto, a very unpopular Secret Santa. This week at Tesco, you can get sprouts, carrots or parsnips from just 19p. Our festive 3. That should get you on the nice list. Tesco, delivering Christmas for 100 years. Selected stores excludes Express, ends 26th of December.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
Don't believe me, just watch.
The 2010s saw the rise of the viral hit when meme-ready tracks like Gangnam Style,
Oppan Gangnam Style,
The Harlem Shake,
Do the Harlem Shake,
What Does the Fox Say?
What Does the Fox Say?
And of course, Old Town Road snowballed from internet oddities to global phenomenons.
I got the horses in the bag. Horse stock is a tag.
Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Investors are hoping for a Santa Claus rally as stocks look poised to head into the Christmas holiday, adding to record highs. And speaking of gains, shares of Boeing are on the rise this morning amid the fallout over CEO Dennis Muhlenberg's firing as the company looks for a fresh start. And the clock is ticking to get those final Christmas gifts in. Retailers are hoping a final sales push will provide some Yuletide cheer for the holiday shopping season. The second half of Worldwide Exchange starts right now.
Well, it's Christmas time again. Decorations.
Welcome back to the show. Merry Christmas Eve. I'm Dominic Chu, in today for Brian Sullivan. Here's how stock futures are looking halfway through the 5 a.m. Eastern Time hour as the S&P looks to lock in its best annual performance since 1997. Remember, markets are closing at 1 p.m. Eastern Time today and will remain closed through the Christmas day. I'll kick off back again on Thursday. You can see here the S&P opening up by about 1 point if these gains hold into the opening bell. The S&P, the Dow now up by about 12 points and the NASDAQ up by just about 6. So we could see another set of record highs today. Now, today also kicks off the first day of the so-called Santa Claus rally period, a festive time of year for traders and bulls, which happens on the final 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year. Now, the S&P has posted a 1.3% gain on average since 1950 during that time span. In the last decade, the markets only posted 2 losing Santa Claus sessions. Remember, 5 days in one year and then 2 days into the next. And that was in 2013 and 2014. You can see there those down days. But again, that period that period seasonably strong for stocks overall. Let's check on the Asian markets and spin to our globe over there. You can see the Japanese markets just about flat on the day. Hang Seng in Hong Kong, just about 0.1% declines, and the Shanghai Composite up about 0.2%. In the European markets, let's spin that globe. Many of them, as you can see, they're actually closed for the Christmas Eve holiday, but those ones that have specks of color, the German DAX down by 0.1%, the FTSE 100 and the CAC in France just marginally to the upside in this kind of holiday trading session. Not a lot of volumes out there in Europe, nor do we expect them in the U.S. today. Let's get a look at some of the other top stories that we are following. The $1.6 billion exit package for WeWork co-founder Adam Neumann could potentially get even sweeter if the company goes public. According to the Financial Times, documents show Neumann could earn hundreds of millions of dollars more thanks to an agreement with the office space company and its top shareholder. The FT says the deal revised the terms of a certain class of shares held by Neumann that may rise in value sometime down the road. President Trump has tapped administration official Robert Blair to lead the White House's 5G wireless efforts. Blair currently serves as the senior advisor to Chief of Staff Mick Mulvaney. He is also one of the witnesses Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has called to testify in the impeachment trial against President Trump. And Spirit Airlines has announced it will buy 100 Airbus jets through the year 2027. The budget airline says the deal includes a mix of the company's A319, A320, and A321 planes, with the option to buy up to 50 more aircraft. Spirit picked up the European planes despite the Trump administration imposing 10% tariffs on them. So big news there for Airbus in terms of Boeing and that battle. We're less than a day away from Christmas now, which means the holiday shopping season is nearing its end. Retailers have been riding high since Black Friday, and then last weekend, Super Saturday shattered all sales records with more than, get this, a $34 billion holiday haul, the single biggest in U.S. history. Now we'll wait to see if retailers can carry that momentum into the year 2020. Joining me now to discuss all of this is Janet Kloppenberg, president at JJK Research Associates. Janet, so great to have you here. It's the last day before Christmas, so let's talk about those companies in retail that are so much in focus. Let's break them down into naughty and nice. We'll start with nice first. Which retailers are on your nice list this year? Hey, Janet, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi, yes. Let's talk about your nice list for Christmas this year. Let's figure out what's going on in terms of retailers and the ones that you think are going to do the best this year going into 2020.
Well, I think we have the big five to talk about: Walmart, Target, Amazon, of course, Costco, and lastly, Best Buy. I think these retailers have provided great innovation this year in terms of assortment and obviously adding great omni-channel services, which have made shopping so easy and so convenient for the consumer.
So if those are the ones that you're focusing on right now, you mentioned the reasons why they are doing well.
Right.
Are there other aspects and trends that you are watching in 2020 that make sure that these nice retailers are the ones that can continue some of those themes into next year?
Well, I think what they brought the consumer is great newness in terms of assortment as well as convenience and service. If they can continue to add that innovation and stimulate the consumer to traffic their locations instead of competitors, I think that's the key. They're also providing great value in terms of pricing, and that has been a key driver to their market share gains this year.
So for so long, over the past maybe few months or even the better part of this last year, the focus for a lot of the growth story in Walmart and its shares, Target and its shares, has been the e-commerce side of things.
Correct.
They're double-digit growing there. There's a lot of the same-day delivery push. There's a lot of this idea that you can go and shop online and pick up in store. All of those, will they continue to drive these big box retailers? And are others poised to maybe try to emulate that, to kind of play catch up with Walmart and Target?
Of course. So they will continue to enforce those services, provide a greater greater services as we go forward. They've made great investments there. Retailers like Kohl's and JCPenney and Macy's are making those investments, but not at the pace that these others have. And I think there'll be a catch-up year for some of the other players. But they're behind. and they've lost some of the other players like Macy's and JCPenney's and Kohl's don't have the loyalty that Walmart and Target have now, and it'll be tough for them to get that.
All right, so how many of those retailers you just mentioned are on your naughty list, the ones that may not fare as well in 2020?
Well, you know, we have a lot of legacy Penny and Kohl's, but we have Victoria's Secrets, we have Gap, we have Old Navy, we have a very important name called Kate Spade, which was once on the top of its industry. And these brands have not evolved. They are not as relevant as they used to be, and they are losing share not only to newer brands that the millennial and Gen Z are locking into, but also to the off-price retailers who today not only provide great service, not as much omni-channel, but great convenience, great value, and a great assortment of brand names.
All right, some brands to watch. Janet Kloppenberg, always great to get your thoughts. Thank you very much.
Nice to see you.
And happy holidays. Thank you very much, Janet.
Thank you.
All right. Well, turning now to the financials from retail, the space bouncing back from a disastrous 2018 to claim a spot as one of the market's hottest sectors this year. But can the big banks keep it up in 2020? Who better to break it down than Wilfred Frost? He has your 2020 playbook.
It's been a bumpy year for financials in 2019, so here are the key things to watch for in 2020. First, interest rates. Bank stocks are always linked to the yield curve because of its direct impact on net interest income. This has been particularly the case in the second half of 2019, as it's likely to be next year, as investor fears over where we are in the cycle continue to rise. Second, regulation. After a decade of ever-increasing costs and restrictions, banks have enjoyed 3 years of easing regulation. The 2020 presidential race will have a huge impact on the direction from here. And as President Trump's administration has shown, quite a lot of regulatory change can be made without congressional approval. Third, tech and automation. Tech has led to new challenges and challengers for the big banks. Despite that, the big players continue to get bigger, even if their margins are pressured in the process. And more mergers could arise, as we've seen with Truist and Charles Schwab.
All right, our thanks to Wilfred Frost there for that look in financials in 2020. For more on the sector, let's bring in Gerard Cassidy, Managing Director and Banking Analyst at RBC Capital Markets. Gerard, always great to get your thoughts. Happy holidays to you. Let's talk about what Wilfred just mentioned. The banks, are they going to be the hot place to invest in 2020?
Yes, we think they will be. As you pointed out, this year has been a very strong year for the banks. You had some very meaningful multiple expansion because, as we recall from last year, the bank stocks sold off very hard at the end of December and came into the 2019 trading at single-digit multiples of 8 to 9 times. Multiples expanded to 11 to 12 times, and we think that we're not going to get the multiple expansion in 2020, but we could get earnings estimate upgrades throughout the year if the yield curve remains steep, which would be very positive for the banks.
All right, so the yield curve remaining steep is always going to be a focus for bank investors and traders out there. Some have argued that the yield curve doesn't matter as much to some of these financial institutions as they have in the past. Is that the case, or do you push back and say that, yes, the yield curve is still very important from a macro perspective for the banking industry overall?
I would say that it's very important. It is still a key driver for profitability. And even if, the folks, investors don't look at it that way, the market still does. So a steepening curve is beneficial for the banks. Now, there will be a limit. There will come a time when long-term interest rates, if they were to go up too much, would work against the banks because the market would then expect possibly inflation is heating up and the Fed would have to pivot. That's not our base case. We're not suggesting that's going to happen near term. But if we could get a yield curve into the 225 to 250 range, long end of the curve, by the end of 2020, that would be very positive for the banks.
So, Gerard, let's talk about whether or not, let's put some action to this and actionable intel for our audience. Are there places within banking that you buy over others, or is this a wholesale great story for banks? Do we go money center banks? Do we go regionals? Do we go broker dealers? Do we go some of these investment bank pure plays? What's the best place, do you think, that goes into 2020 for these banks?
we think that there's two ways of playing the banks into 2020. The money center or universal bank approach is, I think, one of the ways to play it. As you may know, the consumer banking portion of those universal banks is very important. The consumer is spending very good money, as you've pointed out, with the Christmas holiday season, and we think that's going to benefit the names such as Bank of America, JP Morgan Chase, and Citigroup. Also, you do get the benefit of, should the capital markets business pick up, those stocks would benefit as well. Then on the regional side, the regionals still are going to benefit from the growth of the economy. We think Truist, which is that merger between BB&T and SunTrust, not only do you get the benefit of the southeastern economy picking up steam, you also get the cost savings from that transaction. And then moving into the Midwest, you can look at KeyCorp, who does a very good job as well. So there's two ways of owning the banks this year. The pure investment banks would probably stay on the sidelines for now. But if you needed to own one, we'd go with Morgan Stanley, since it's more retail wealth management orientated than a Goldman Sachs.
All right, so Gerard, before we let you go, one of the things that I and many others on Wall Street know you the best for is the Texas ratio, this idea that you look at some of the non-performing assets, signs of stress in the financial system. Are there any places that you are seeing stress within the financial system that would lead you to be a little bit more cautious on the sector, or is this all systems go for banks?
It's a really good question, and at this time, it's all systems go. There are two areas that have bubbled up to be somewhat of a concern, but right now, relative to the size of the banking sector, they're not material like what we saw going into 2007 and 8 with the housing sector. The first is subprime auto. That is clearly one area that's having some stress, but again, the banks are not big players in that. And more recently, we're seeing the energy sector is starting to show some challenges as well. But here, when you look at the exposure that the bigger banks have to energy lending, again, it's very manageable. But overall, it's all systems go. The credit quality picture in the United States banking industry is the best we've seen in years. Capital is strong and liquidity is strong. And if we have a healthy, strong economy in 2020, the banks should do well.
All right, Gerard Cassidy has made the call. All systems go for the banks in 2020. Happy holidays to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
All right, coming up on the show, more on that C-suite shakeup at Boeing. We lay out the massive challenges that lay ahead for the incoming CEO, David Calhoun. Plus, when it comes to holiday cheer, these cities could use a little, or a lot, depending on how you want to look at it. New details on the new list, ranking the rudest cities in America when Worldwide Exchange returns after this.
You know it's out there somewhere, but you just keep missing out. I'm talking about your dream job. Now it's easier to find and land your next role with the LinkedIn app. Build connections, keep in touch, and be the first to hear about new jobs. LinkedIn has more openings than applicants. And sometimes all it takes is one LinkedIn connection to land the job that's right for you. Don't miss out. Get your next big break and find the job meant for you. Download the free LinkedIn app today.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone. One with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12/19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Spend Christmas Day listening to the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Featuring 5 big matchups on the holiday schedule. Unwrap the action starting at 12 Eastern when the Celtics take on the Raptors in Toronto, followed by the Bucks and the 76ers at 2:30. The holiday cheers continue with the Rockets and Warriors at 5 and the Clippers and Lakers at 8. And a showdown between the Pelicans and Nuggets at 10:30. 'Tis the season with the NBA on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. All right, the NBA game I'm most looking forward to is, it's got to be Lakers-Clippers, a clash of West Titans, LeBron and AD, Kawhi and Paul George, LA versus LA. Both teams will be rested and at home, so no load management talk. This is going to be a great one. Search The Haber Show to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
Welcome back to Worldwide Exchange. More bad news for Boeing. The company announcing last night that it had told suppliers to stop shipping parts for the 737 MAX jet for at least 1 month starting in January. The news coming just hours after Boeing fired its CEO Dennis Muilenburg amid that ongoing 737 MAX fallout, effective immediately. Muilenburg had been at the helm at Boeing since 2015. The job of getting the 737 MAX jet back in the air and back in service will now fall to incoming CEO David Calhoun, who takes over in January. Last month, Calhoun spoke exclusively to CNBC about Muilenburg's efforts to revamp the 737 MAX's flight control system.
From the vantage point of our board, Dennis has done everything right from the beginning. Remember, Dennis didn't create this problem, but from the beginning, he knew that MCAS should and could be done better, and he has led a program to rewrite MCAS to alleviate all of those conditions that ultimately beset two unfortunate crews and the families and victims.
All right, those were comments he made most recently with us on CNBC. Joining us now for more on the latest developments at Boeing is CNBC's Leslie Josephs, who reports on all the airlines, knows everything about them. Thank you very much for being here. Let's take us through whether or not this is going to be the reset that Boeing needs to get the 737 MAX woes behind it, if it can get the plane in the air.
The short answer is we don't know. Calhoun isn't even taking over until January. The date for the plane's return to service has slipped time and time again. It's a huge headache for the airlines, and the U.S. airlines have it out past Easter or around Easter, if not later than that. So we don't know if this is going to be it. But the thing is that Muilenburg's communication with the FAA had become so tense, and that is such a crucial relationship for Boeing. They need that FAA blessing to get the plane back in the air. And once that happened, we saw Muilenburg go.
Yeah, I mean, you wonder whether that story from the Times and everything about that meeting between Steve Dixon and him and Muilenburg and the idea of don't ask us for any favors kind of thing, if that really was the kind of precipitating catalyst behind it. Take us through this deliberation. The board met.
Right.
What did they have to talk about? Why was this decision made, and why was it now?
Well, you saw in the Calhoun clip, the board had stood by Muilenburg for months and months, and even when lawmakers and even victims' family members were saying, why are you still here? The board stuck with him. But this meeting that they had with the FAA, and which was followed by a very public dressing down, you saw the FAA come out to an American corporation and say, we call the shots. We are the ones in charge, and to sort of assert that sort of control and to make sure that the public knows that they have that kind of control really was a turning point for them, and they couldn't do it anymore. It has already trickled down to the suppliers. They have a production halt that's starting in January. They've already warned the suppliers yesterday, don't send us any parts. So it was a turning point for them.
This is not a hit job on Dennis Muilenburg at all. I mean, if you go back to 2015, you look at the stock for Boeing under his tenure.
Right.
And it's up 143% during Muilenburg's time at Boeing since just 2015. What exactly does David Calhoun have to do as CEO? What does the board have to do at Boeing to make sure that they can get that trajectory back on track?
Well, Boeing has this immense backlog of planes, and I think the stock performance would be very different if this grounding occurred and they were struggling to sell planes and it was just starting to get off the ground. But they have more than 4,000 of these planes. This is a profit center, or could be a profit center for Boeing well into the next decade. So it's crucial that they get this plane approved by the FAA, and that's what Calhoun's number one job is.
All right. Leslie Josephs, thank you very much for all of that reporting on Boeing as well. For more on the 737 MAX, head over to CNBC.com. Leslie's story is up there, and a lot of our others as well. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Well, let's find out what else you will be talking about today. Time for this morning's top trending stories. For that, we turn to Rahel Solomon. Rahel, tis the season for holiday cheer.
Humbug.
But we
not
don't
in certain cities.
I know.
So Business Insider spent the last 2 months asking American adults to choose the 5 rudest cities in the country. And the #1 city not only won by a landslide, it received nearly twice as many votes as the second rudest city. And it was none other than...
Oh, don't do it. You're a Philly native.
Yes,
I know, don't do it.
New York City, the Big Apple, got more than 1/3 of the votes. Apparently, this is not a new trend either, because one historian says that New Yorkers have been considered rude since the 1700s. Rounding out the top 5, Los Angeles, Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Boston. I would like to say that my Philly didn't even make the top 5. Yes, we were coming up in the world. Also, can I just point out this New York Post headline?
It is
Merry
pretty funny.
Christmas. Now get out of my face. And I'm going to add, you filthy animal.
Yes, just for that Home Alone kind of illusion. It is the time of year. Go watch Home Alone. Go watch A Christmas Story on TBS, whatever it is, for 24 hours.
Bah humbug.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, the world's tallest basketball player is now the world's tallest conductor. 7'5" Boston Celtics center Taco Fall traded in his jersey for a tuxedo and
This is great.
Yes, and he led the Boston Pops during their holiday concert. Fall conducted the orchestra as they were playing the Christmas classic Sleigh Ride, even breaking out some of his own moves. His tux, how about this, Dom, was a size 48 double extra long. I'm going to guess that's not available in stores. You probably have to get that made, but as a professional basketball player, probably
But
not.
Taco has got such grace on the court, and you can see some of the moves he's making as a conductor. That guy's
Yes.
light on his feet no matter what jersey or tuxedo you put him in.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. He hasn't really actually played that much this season, but he's still so popular.
He is.
Okay.
All right, there you go.
Speaking of athletes, call it a homecoming because veteran running back Marshawn Lynch is returning to Seattle. The Seahawks offered Lynch a one-year contract, beginning with the team's upcoming matchup against the 49ers and extending into the postseason. The five-time Pro Bowler played in Seattle from 2010 to 2015 before briefly retiring. The Seahawks have been in need of a running back after losing 3 of its own to season-ending injuries. And when asked about a return to Seattle, Lynch said, "We got history there. We got unfinished business." I'm sure they hope so.
You wonder whether or not a bag of Skittles was involved in the negotiations for beast mode.
Whatever gets him there.
Listen, as a
Whatever gets him
Niners
there.
fan, we feared Marshawn Lynch for so long. We're going to fear him a little bit more for this last game of the season.
As you
By the
should.
way, the Niners-Seattle game has been flex time to the Sunday night game.
Okay.
So it'll be a primetime audience to watch Marshawn Lynch.
And you will be watching.
I will be watching intently.
Do you think he'll
for
speak
sure.
in the press conference?
I'm just here so I
Probably-
won't get fined.
Right, probably
All right.
not.
Rahel Solomon, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Coming up on deck, Netflix's CEO gets an early Christmas present in the form of a payday. Just how much she'll be making for leading the streaming giant. Plus, 2019 seeing a number of IPO hits and plenty of misses. Our own Kate Rooney joins us to break down the companies that came out on top and who could follow suit coming up next year.
Ho, ho, ho. Who's made a list this year? I want a new phone, one with amazing cameras, ultra-wide lens, of course, live focus video. Well, it has to be 5G ready to stream all my films. Can it come with something awesome to listen to them through?
Darling, I think he was talking to the kids.
Get everything you want and more. Purchase a Samsung 5G ready device and claim a pair of silver wireless Galaxy Buds at no extra cost. Shop our 5G handsets in store or online at your local O2 store or o2.co.uk. 18 plus. Offer excludes Galaxy Fold 5G. Purchased by the 25th of the 12th 19. Claim from Samsung within 30 days. T's and C's apply.
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
Move, hit a shot, he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Far wing, elevates, triple bucket.
The roar of the crowd. The shot clock ticks down. Will the ball go in? The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. And the replays just don't cut
The
it.
sideline, the man fleet for 3.
TuneIn Premium brings you every minute of the NBA season streaming live, so you can be there when it matters most. Hear it now, hear it live on TuneIn.
Pump fake in the lane, turnaround jumper from 8 feet is good on the
Search
right block.
NBA today to start listening.
Forget the cheese basket and socks this holiday season and get the ones you love and even the ones you just kind of like. A subscription at TuneIn Premium. With TuneIn Premium, you'll be giving them the gift they can enjoy all year long. Featuring live NFL, NBA, NHL, and MLB games, commercial-free news, and nonstop music. TuneIn Premium brings the best of audio to you. This year, we're making Santa's job a whole lot easier. So, forget the stocking. Stuff their phone with TuneIn Premium. Search Premium to start your free trial.
Welcome back to the show. Time for your executive recap. The headlines you need in 60 seconds. The U.S. military is warning members to steer clear of at-home DNA tests. In a memo obtained by NBC News, senior Pentagon officials told members that DNA testing companies were targeting military members with discounts and other undisclosed incentives. The memo adds the kits could expose personal and genetic information and potentially create unintended security consequences and risks. The testing company 23andMe tells NBC it takes the utmost efforts to protect consumer privacy. Netflix CEO Reed Hastings is getting a pay bump with the new year. According to company documents filed with the SEC, Hastings will see his total compensation climb 10% to nearly $34.7 million in 2020. $34 million of that will be in the company's stock options. And then one of Warren Buffett's portfolio managers at Berkshire Hathaway is getting a big addition to his job description. Todd Combs will take over as the CEO of Geico next week as Bill Roberts steps down ahead of his retirement from Berkshire's auto insurer. In addition to his job, Combs will continue to manage his $14 billion Berkshire investment portfolio. It's a strong endorsement for Combs, but KBW analyst Meyer Shields does not think the move improves the chances Combs will succeed Buffett as Berkshire's next CEO. Well, from selling out to selling off, it's been tough sledding for some of the 2019 marquee IPOs out there. Big tech unicorns like Uber and Lyft are struggling. WeWork never even made it off the ground. But it's not all bad news for the newbies in 2019. Despite the headlines, it was a solid year for IPOs. CNBC's Kate Rooney joins us now with more on that. And Kate, you're back from the West Coast.
I'm back.
It's good to have you back in the studio here. Let's go through the hits, runs, and errors here. In your mind, what was the biggest characterization that you can make about 2019 for IPOs?
That the big money losers are not working anymore. So you had Uber and Lyft were among the biggest offerings this year, both down 30%, but they had some of the same characteristics. If you look at IPOs as a sector, they're actually outperforming stocks. So the Renaissance IPO index has outperformed the S&P in what could be a historic year for stocks. Other trend, biotech is doing really well. So Karuna Therapeutics is the biggest winner, up 400% this year.
Amazing.
You also had Beyond Meat, so some good consumer names, but biotech was by far the biggest winner, and some other healthcare names. So medical device makers were also pretty popular.
So we take stock of what happened in 2019. I remember at one point we were talking about the IPO picture. I had one IPO banker, a big banker at one of these investment banks, tell me that this was a rough year. It was brutal, he called it at one point in the later part of the year. Can we expect that same kind of environment in 2019?
People are expecting, because of what's happened this year as a whole, I think if you look beyond the headlines, the actual overall performance was pretty good, and tech names have outperformed. So there is still an appetite for growth, an appetite for companies that can show profits, not necessarily immediately, but not on the spectrum of Uber and Lyft, where you really don't know at what point they're going to turn a profit. If you have a sort of path to profitability, that seems to be what analysts are worried about. And tech is the big outperformer. So there is still, in this low yield environment, folks are looking for those high growth names.
So right now, Kate, we're showing some viewers out there and listeners on Sirius Satellite XM Radio. We're showing the top 2019 IPOs. You mentioned that Karuna Therapeutics one up 385%. This biotech theme, is that one that we will see play out again? I mean, for many biotech investors, it's like a binary outcome, right? Either a drug they develop works or it doesn't, or they get bought out or they don't. Does that same kind of thing carry into 2020?
If the FDA continues approving drugs faster than analysts thought, that is expected to continue, and in the current regulatory environment, think that's, but like you said, it depends on the drug, it depends on the company. So you do see that uptick if a drug gets approved. In the case of Karuna, it was a schizophrenia drug. All
right, so let's talk about what it's going to be like in 2020. What are we expecting? What are the big ones that we should be watching? I think, is it Airbnb? Is it Palantir? What are these names that we'll be watching?
Airbnb seems to be the one that everybody's watching. They actually have shown a pretty decent path to profitability, some profits over the past 2 years. That is the biggest name. You also have DoorDash, so people have been interested in the food delivery space. Names like Credit Karma in the fintech space. We haven't seen a big fintech IPO in a long time. So those are some important names to watch.
All right. Is there a big industry within those IPOs? You mentioned fintech. I think you think of cybersecurity. I can think of 5G wireless and everything else that's happening. What do we think is going to be that big theme?
Cybersecurity has been huge in private markets, so you wouldn't be surprised to see some of those names translate to IPOs. But then again, biotech. We just have seen so many names. The top 3 names were all either medical devices or biotech. So I would keep an eye on those.
All right, Kate Rooney, welcome back to the East Coast.
Thanks,
Thank you
Tom.
very much for all that.
Good to see you.
Well, that does it for Worldwide Exchange this morning. Let's take a look at those futures. They are moving to the upside. We could tack on some more gains to those records that we saw just yesterday. Merry Christmas Eve. Happy holidays. We'll see you on Thursday. Squawk Box begins right now.
It's the day before Christmas. Joe and Becky are gone, but Andrew and Sully are here to push on. And they're not alone, not by any degree. We brought in Tom Farley and our friend MCC. It's been a bad year for Boeing, the stock price in question. Will the new CEO cause a volatile session? The tickers are moving, and we'll summarize just how the markets keep hitting new highs. Trade talks advancing, but will Trump reveal when China will sign a Phase 1 trade deal? Kick back and relax. The year's almost done. Squawk Box begins in 3, 2, 1.
Good morning and welcome to a special edition, a Christmas Eve edition of Squawk Box live right here from the NASDAQ market side in Times Square. I'm Andrew Ross Sorkin along with Brian Sullivan. We've got Joe and Becky are off today. We've got MCC back in the house. Exactly.
Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas. And Tom Farley here of Farport Ventures wearing the best blazer of the season.
Merry Christmas all.
Yes.
Merry Christmas to everyone.
Everyone's got the look.
And you got the sweater on, dude.
I've got the sweater.
I knew it. It's a Christmas Eve tradition, right?
And I try to amortize this shirt that I bought years ago.
One day a year.
One day a year I get to use it. I actually go year off, year on with. I have a tie that I sometimes do. Sometimes I do the tie after New Year's. It's a tartan.
Yeah.
What's the pronunciation do we go with?
Tartan?
Tartan?
Yeah, that's yeah.
He's got the tartan on as well, but each tartan means something, right? There's a
family or a clan.
There's a family or a clan that goes along with it. I don't know.
I'll make up a story. By the end of the show, by the end of the 3 hours, I'll have
I don't know
story
about my
Give him a couple scotches. He'll be the Mick Farleys by the end of the show.
Say you're an Irishman, not a Scot, right?
No, yeah, I'm across the bay.
Anyway, by the way, very quick shout out to Dean and the whole producing crew that put that together, which is awesome.
Every year, it's
every year.
Fun that they
every year
manage a really good
anyway.
tool.
Shall we?
Yeah, let's get it going here. All right, let's start. Why don't we start with the markets? I don't know if you guys have heard, but the markets are at all-time highs. The Dow closed nearly 100 points higher in yesterday's session. All three of the major averages posting record closes. Shares of Boeing actually led the gains. Of course, we're going to have more on Boeing in a second and all throughout the show. And a reminder, today's trading day is shortened, so everybody can go out and panic shop and panic wrap. The stock market closes at 1 p.m. Eastern time. The bond market a little later at 2 o'clock Eastern. Right now, stock futures, they are ever so fractionally higher. The implied open about 14 points up, guys. But still, because we're at all-time highs, any gain, whatever it is going to be a new record. And look at that sort of what we call the banner at the bottom. The NASDAQ winning streak, now the longest in more than 2 years. They're having their best year since all the way back in 2003. It has been a pretty doggone good year for equity. You wonder if that's going to trickle through, Andrew, to holiday spending. Are people going to go out and say, you know what?
I think
market's up?
Well, I would think that actually on the luxury side, which has been hit, it should go up. Will it go everywhere?
All those commercials with the car, with the giant bow, that could actually happen.
Making people feel good.
But to the degree that the stock market reflects a good economy,
Yes.
I mean, it may be not be causal, just may be coincident, right? That you've got a really good stock market, you've got a really good economy, so you're going to have great retail sales, potentially.
We're going to find out.
A year ago, the S&P 500 on this day hit 2341. Today, it's at, call it 3230. It's up 38% in a year since Christmas Eve.
And Christmas Eve last year was really rough.
I believe it was the low. It was either 21st or 24th.
Remember when there were big sell-offs?
We dropped 15.5% intra-month, came back toward the end, but still into the month with down 8%, the worst month, December since 1931 or some terrible historical reference like that.
It was that was a true panic.
Yeah.
The markets were in a panic. This year, everybody's having a Merry Christmas, except maybe Dennis
Another
Muhlenberg.
lesson, that was a
Except
time
for Dennis
to buy.
Muhlenberg. That's a nice little segue to our next story. We should tell you about shares of Boeing right now. They closed nearly 3% higher yesterday after Boeing's board fired CEO Dennis Muilenburg. The decision coming as the company faces the worst crisis in its history, 100-year history. Boeing has struggled to regain the trust of regulators, customers, and the public since the crashes of two 737 MAX jets killed more than 346 people. Now, Chairman David Calhoun will become the company's CEO in January. I want to show you a little bit of video. I spoke to Dennis Muilenburg back at that DealBook conference I did in November, his last public interview as CEO, and I asked him at that time whether he'd consider resigning. This is what he had to say.
Has there ever been a day where you're sitting around going, you know what, this is not working. It's not working. I got to get out of here. It's better for the company for me to leave.
Andrew, I think it's fair to say I've thought about it. But to be frank, that's not what's in my character. I don't see running away from a challenge, resigning as the right solution.
I have to say, at the time that he said that, I admired the answer. I really did. Does everybody here think, I'm actually curious, is the David Calhoun appointment a game changer? Stock went up 3%, but you look at some of the commentary this morning. I'm looking at Richard Blumenthal, the Democrat of Connecticut, so many others who say, you know what? David Calhoun effectively part of the problem because he was there. He came on our air, if you remember, about a month ago, endorsed. Dennis Muilenburg endorsed the timeline in terms of when the MAX was going to come online again. He's been there for most of this period. Is he enough of a change?
I think so. You and I had this debate yesterday off air. He's of the system, but he was not the chairman of the company. This is a very complicated business, by and large, a great company. And if you bring somebody entirely new in from the outside, that has all sorts of other challenges. Dave Calhoun has had a long, exemplary career. And I think Larry Kellner also, as chairman, was a great pick. Chairman of Sabre and has had a long career in aviation.
It's going to really depend on his tonality. I mean, the reason you bring in somebody new is to send a new message. And as he's been doing phone, I'm sure he's been on the phone for the last 48 hours talking about what's going to be different now with regulators, with Blumenthal, et cetera. All of these things. What does he say and how does he change how the company has acted thus far? That would go a long way.
So I know David a little bit personally. He serves on the board of my college, Virginia Tech. So I've gotten to know him just sort of as a human being a little bit. And David is the anti-Dennis. I think that Dennis was that sort of stiff, sort of super formal. David walks around. You can't get him to wear a suit. He wears jeans. Right. He's a casual guy. He's friendly. He hates wearing ties. He just wants to. He's a communicator. He was the CEO of Nielsen. He was running GE jet engines. So he's kind of a salesman type. I think, Andrew, it comes down to everything about how well do you communicate? Because obviously Muilenburg, as you did in that great interview, Muilenburg ticked off. I almost said something else. The FAA. FAA's like, you don't tell us what to do. We tell you what to do.
Ticked off the FAA. Ticked off regulators.
The NTSB.
And by the way, also, I think ultimately had lost the trust of his clients, meaning the big airline CEOs. If you spoke with the big airline CEOs over the past couple of weeks, the frustration level, the fact that Gary Kelly was on the record in the New York Times saying...
And on CNBC.
And on CNBC too. But I was just saying just that last article over the weekend, which I thought the comments were scathing. That to me is where you say to yourself, okay, how do you repair that relationship? And even if you're the best guy in the world... I mean, even if you're the greatest, nicest guy, and I think that Dennis is an upstanding guy. I'm not here to disparage Dennis, but I think it's very hard to get that credibility back.
And Spirit Airlines just announced they're buying 100 planes from Airbus. And you wouldn't think that Spirit Airlines would be buying from Airbus. I think that those sort of evidential points are building
I think there's two other, and let's not forget. I mean, it was certainly nowhere near the level of the 737 MAX, but you also had this Starliner. This rocket issue. Space issue. I mean, so...
Now, rocket science is hard.
Rocket science is hard, and I'm not a rocket scientist, nor do I play one on television, Michelle. But it is, I think that might have been, Andrew, sort of, wow. Again, just miscalculations.
Another negative front page story.
All over the front. Boeing rocket fails.
It was bad timing, but everybody fails in space missions. SpaceX, Blue Origin, every NASA, every single one
as well.
Yeah, terrible timing.
Pile on.
And one other thing to highlight, and Steve Leisman has pointed this out, Boeing, to a large degree, affects national GDP in an outsized way because those large items feed directly into the equation. It's when you hear, oh, they're going to order Airbus perhaps instead of Boeing, it has national implications in a big way.
Can I ask you guys a question? Because I think that this is a part of the story that maybe we as CNBC haven't gone into enough, but maybe we will. Because all of us around this table fly a lot, right? Mm-hmm. So Andrew.
Yes.
When the MAX comes back in.
Yes, but you're talking to the wrong guy. I will look because that's who I am.
I have met people who said, I will never get on that plane again. Regular flyers. Would you fly the MAX?
I ultimately will, but I don't think that I would be.
I will.
I think if it was the first plane out of the gate, meaning it's up on the first couple of weeks.
Don't worry, Phil LeBovie on that flight.
3 or 4 months, no. However, I will say this. Right now, and I don't know if even people appreciate this, we were talking about this off air yesterday as well. Some of these planes are actually flying around as we speak because they're being moved by special pilots, not even special pilots, but pilots from American Airlines, from some of the other airlines, from one place to the next. And from what I'm told, the pilots have no problem getting on these planes and flying them empty, typically from one airport to another, just to store them. But the reason they don't have the problem is because they understand how the MCAS system works.
Right.
Sure. Having said that, I've also asked the question privately of some of the airline CEOs who have had these planes in the air. While they've been in the air, have they ever had a problem with the MCAS system? And they say no.
But there was a Bank of America survey a couple days ago where they polled people, and it was like a high number of people. Now, listen, what people say and what they do is very different, but they said they'll never get back on the plane. And I just wonder if you're United, Southwest, or American, and your passengers start to say, I need to be rebooked. I don't feel comfortable. And the planes start going half full, you got an issue if you're Boeing.
I'll believe it when I see it. Full disclosure,
yeah,
I own shares of Boeing.
You do?
I bought them when they fell 20% on the initial report.
Now that she's out of the journal, she's no longer.
We can't own stocks.
She's no longer an official journalista anymore.
I'm going the other way. I asked an analyst yesterday, what is the stock price of Boeing if there's no 737 MAX?
Right, and what they say, I'd like to know.
275.
Okay,
275 was their position.
I will definitely be underwater.
I think it's a real scenario. It's a real scenario. I'm not predicting it, but it's a real possibility.
But my understanding is the reason the pilots don't have any fear about it because they understand the MCAT system, that a lot of it was a training issue.
Yes.
And making sure you understood what to do when you were getting certain signals, right? So the plane itself is not the issue. It's the interface with the human being that is part of the problem.
And this is one of the things that Boeing and Dennis Muhlenberg have not really been able to say publicly. You can't blame the pilots, right? And part of the issue was the training, was informing them. And frankly, there were issues even within the MCAS system that I'm not sure the trainers even understood themselves at the time. Exactly.
So if you saw Holman Jenkins' column a couple days ago in the Wall Street Journal, I thought he raised a very interesting point, which is that so many more pilots are learning almost exclusively, for the most part, on simulators and not actually getting in planes where the way you learn to ride a bicycle is you ride the bicycle, right? And you start to understand physically what happens with your... And when you fly a plane, there's a similarity about learning how the plane feels. Like Sully, the other famous Sully, what he did here after taking off out of LaGuardia was about understanding intuitively the physics and dynamics of flying a plane.
Okay, well, I don't want to scare the public, but I had a conversation with an airline CEO just last week about this privately. This issue of the fact that there's such a demand for pilots. There's not enough of them. Most pilots historically they used to be in the military. They had all of this experience. They had hours and hours, even if they didn't have hours on this particular plane.
In a real physical plane.
They were in a physical plane. Today, that is not the case. Now, the executive that I spoke to believes genuinely, I hope, that it's just as safe. That once you have...
You learn on a simulator.
Once you're on, and if you have 2,000 hours, 40,000 hours, whatever.
I've spoken with 3 pilots about this, and they moved the engines up and in toward the fuselage. And so one of the pilots I spoke with said it's like putting a V8 in a Volkswagen Bug.
Interesting.
If you know how to drive it, you're fine. But he said the plane was kind of you had to know the power was different. These are big engines.
The other thing I've picked up from industry insiders is that the foreign pilots are not necessarily trained as rigorously as U.S. pilots, which is my worst nightmare, because if I'm traveling abroad for business with my family, I want to believe those pilots are really great, just like they are here.
To that point, and Brian, to your point where you're talking about, will people ever get back on a plane? If you remember the flight that flew into San Francisco, it was a foreign airline, and the Wall Street Journal did a huge article about the difference in training between what happens in Asia and what happens in the United States.
Was it a flight from South Korea? It hit the tail right when it was coming in?
Yeah, after that article, I decline Asian Airlines whenever possible, because I am not comfortable with the systematic safety systems that they have set up to communicate intra-airline and about planes.
For all of this agita, though, over planes, have you ever been, I mean, I've gone to Africa, and I've been on little planes with a guy in flip-flops who looks like he's 18 years old. So the whole thing is complicated.
But those planes have a high glide ratio. Just remember that, 7-to-1 in terms of coming down. All right, so much left to do on this special Christmas Eve Squawk Box. On deck today marks the official start of the Santa rally period for the market. Well, we've already been in a rally, so will the trend continue? We're going to talk end-of-year strategy for you and your money coming up. And later on, Elon Musk tweeting his Tesla stock price, it's $4.20. Last time he tweeted about $4.20, he got in hot water with the SEC and had to step aside as board chairman. We're going to talk about it at the bottom of the hour as well.
Bless this guy. I mean, come on.
$4.20 stock price, so high.
Am I allowed to say I would hope he wasn't when he tweeted that?
You can say whatever you want now. We can't say anything. We're back right after this.
Santa Claus is coming to town.
Today's big number, 145,000. That's how many of Boeing 737 MAX flights have been canceled through June of 2020. This CNBC program is sponsored by Payton and Regal.
The Grand DFS sale featuring Wallace.
Hello.
And Gromit.
Well, say hello, lad.
Every sofa is made to order.
By a speedy Sofa-matic machine.
By hand.
Oh, suit yourself.
So you can have your sofa exactly how you want it.
Made of cheese?
Not that exactly.
Oh, probably a good thing, eh, Gromit? It'd be gone in a jiffy.
The Grand DFS sale is now on. Doors open from 9 a.m. Boxing Day.
How about a cushion made of cheese? Or a footstool?
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
With 2020 on the horizon, TuneIn continues looking back at the stories that shaped the 2010s.
In 2012, Black Lives Matter is born after the killing of an unarmed 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. In 2015, the European refugee crisis sees an unprecedented number of asylum seekers entering the EU after fleeing conflict regions like Syria. And in 2017, the Me Too movement inspires a new wave of social justice.
Search news on TuneIn to be listening when the next decade's big headlines break.
Hi, I'm Tom Haberstroh, host of the Haberstroh podcast. I'm partnering with TuneIn to answer a few questions and get you prepped for NBA Christmas Day. All right, the NBA game I'm most looking forward to is, it's got to be Lakers-Clippers, a clash of West Titans, LeBron and AD, Kawhi and Paul George, LA versus LA. Both teams will be rested and at home, so no load management talk. This is going to be a great one. Search The Habershow to listen to new episodes every Friday throughout the NBA season on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Stocks continue to grind higher as they have all year long. So let's talk about now the markets and your money and your investments all ahead of the Christmas holiday and that period between Christmas and New Year's, what they call the Santa Claus rally. Joining us for that is Hank Smith. He is Chief Investment Officer at Haverford Trust. And here on set is John Praveen, Senior Portfolio Manager at QMA. John and Hank, welcome to you both.
Thank you.
John, have you, and this is the time of year to be honest, we're just going to come clean. Have you been surprised at the resilience of this market through, dare I say, impeachment proceedings, trade wars, Brexit, and we're having right now the best NASDAQ run in 2 years?
Well, a little surprised by the strength and the breadth of the rally, because we have had strong gains not only in the U.S. but in global markets outside the U.S. We have also had gains in the bond market. So surprised by the breadth of the markets, but not necessarily the direction. And the fact that they have moved higher is because they have looked through all of this noise of trade tensions and Brexit, because they had the support of central banks.
But it's, Hank, I hear that, but I don't, is it really noise? And we always say it's noise, but I wonder, you're talking about trade wars, shaving, percents off GDP globally. You're talking about Brexit. Nobody actually knows what's going to happen or what the impact is going to be. The impeachment, though unlikely, certainly, it's one of 3 times in American history. These are big, big headline events. And again, the market has not cared one bit.
Right, they're big headline events, but what's really important for long-term and even intermediate-term returns are low inflation, low interest rates, GDP growth, earnings growth, and balance sheets. And by the way, if we're late in the cycle, it's extraordinary how well capitalized the banking system is, with tons of liquidity and really very little problem loans anywhere. So I think the market is paying attention to what is important and ignoring what emotionally grabs us, but ultimately is not important in terms of investing.
Hank, everybody who's been on the last 2 days has been exceptionally bullish. Everything looks great. What could go wrong?
It's like the worst sign ever.
It's the polar opposite of a year ago today when everybody was bearish. And everybody ended up being wrong a year ago. So what could go wrong right now in the next week, the next month, maybe the next quarter?
Well, I think, Tom, the setup is you're going to have a slightly stronger economy next year, but the returns, the equity returns, are not going to be nearly as robust. So we're counseling our investors to temper their expectations for returns. It might be high single digits, low double digits, but I don't think it's going to be 30%.
I see you nodding your head.
And that, I think, will be the surprise.
You encouraging people to move out of equities and lighten up as a result? Is it expensive?
No, we are not encouraging our investors to move out of equities. Actually, we have increased our equity exposure, and we are going to keep it at, because bonds, I think, are probably not going to do as well next year, because bond yields are likely to rise given the stronger growth backdrop that we are likely to see.
I've been hearing that for 30 years, that bond yields are going to go up. This will be the year.
No, well, last year, 2019, they went from 2.7 to 2.7 to 1.5 or even below. So we should probably get back to somewhere about 2% to 2.5% because of the stronger GDP growth in the U.S. and also a pickup in bond yields outside the United States, because we have had a lot of negative bond yields in Europe, Japan, and other countries. In fact, 12 trillion of bond yields are having negative yields. So if they start grinding higher, we should also see some upward pressure on U.S. Treasury yields.
Hank, if you had to point to one thing in the market next year that looks still sort of undervalued or fairly valued, because I don't think you can say maybe anything is completely undervalued at 19.5 times forward earnings of the S&P 500. Is there one sector, one stock, one investment, anything that you see to go, yeah, that's going to be a good deal in 2020?
Well, Brian, we still believe that 11 years into an historic bull market, you can get better income in equities and growth of income, and that is quite remarkable. So just looking at equities relative to income and fixed income, you're way ahead buying stocks. And yeah, I'll give you one stock that we like very much that's selling for 10 times earnings, CVS, not CBS, but CVS. And we think there's a tremendous opportunity for multiple expansion there as they continue to beat on the top and bottom line, integrating the merger with Aetna. And we like that very, very much coming into this year.
You like that too? I also see you nodding your head.
No, I'm not going to talk about stocks. I can talk more about regions and countries and things of that kind. So, for the last year and the last 10 years, we have had the U.S. outperform international markets. Maybe this is the year where we will probably see a rotation out of the U.S. into international markets because they are likely to see stronger GDP growth, stronger earnings growth. We are likely to see more fiscal stimulus in Europe and also monetary stimulus.
John and Hank, it was a good conversation. Gentlemen, both, we don't see you again. Have a happy New Year. Thank you both very much.
And same to you.
Okay. Coming up when we return, we're going to continue to track the potential for a Santa
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
What was your favorite podcast of 2019? Well, here's ours.
This is the Open Ears Project, a new daily podcast in which people tell us a story about the piece of classical music that means the most to them.
Part mixtape, part sonic love letter. The Open Ears Project is where people share a classical track that gives a glimpse into their lives and allows us to hear the music and each other differently.
Brought to life things that I couldn't really put into words.
Search Open Ears Project on TuneIn to check it out.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2016, when Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield hurls a 49-yard touchdown pass to D.D. Westbrook in a legendary shootout with Patrick Mahomes and the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Snap, play action, rolling right, Baker, one to go deep. He's going to sling it for the end zone, looking for D.D. He's got it! Oh, mama! He's got a touchdown!
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
As we play out the 2010s, TuneIn's looking back at the music trends that defined the decade.
That's why I need a one dance.
The 2010s was the decade of the surprise album drop, where artists from Beyonce, Drake, and Frank Ocean to Radiohead, U2, and the late David Bowie skipped the traditional promotion cycle to bring their music directly to fans with little to no warning. Keep listening to TuneIn for more trends of the 2010s.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. What better way to celebrate the holidays than with a subscription to TuneIn Premium? With a bottomless library of the world's best audio, it's the gift that keeps on giving. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Here comes Santa Claus, right down Santa Claus Lane.
Welcome back to Squawk Box on this Christmas Eve. It's also the first trading session of the Santa Claus rally period. That happens on the final 5 trading days of the year and the first 2 trading days of the new year. The S&P 500 has posted a 1.3% gain on average since 1950 during the Santa Claus rally period. And we want to get a little help tracking Santa Claus this morning from the North American Aerospace Defense Command, known as NORAD. Joining us right now is Lieutenant General Christopher Coates, a NORAD Deputy Commander this year, marking NORAD's 64th year of tracking Santa's flight. General Coates, thank you so very much for joining us this morning. We do have children who watch this program, so they're going to want to know where Santa is at this very moment.
Hey, good morning. Yeah, we're using all our sensors, and we last saw Santa leaving eastern Russia, and he appears to be heading south, perhaps down towards, I don't know, maybe Wake Island, and that would sort of put him on a good trajectory for Australia. We really never know where he's going, but we use those sensors that we use to protect North America every day to have a good look at where Santa's going. That's where we last saw him, and that's where we think he's headed.
Do the Russians ever block the signal, or are you able to just keep constant contact with him when he's over Russia?
Well, we use our own signals, and those are the very same sensors we use every day to watch, as you say, Russian aircraft and other activities.
Is Google?
So we're pretty good at protecting those signals, and we haven't seen any interference yet.
Do you know if Google is using your data?
The red suit goes pretty fast, and we lose them for a while, but we'll pick them up again later.
Right. Do you know if Google uses your data? Because my children try to track Santa, especially tonight, using Google, and we just want to know if their information and data is as good as yours.
Well, we understand that there are others that also track Santa, but NORAD's been doing it for the longest. We're pretty confident in the data we receive, and like I say, we can't talk about what other people's data might show, but we're pretty happy with where we've been able to track Santa.
Final question, because my kids want to. Do you have his phone number? Because they've asked me that.
Sure, absolutely. You can get a hold of us at least at 1-877-HI-NORAD, but I don't know if you can get a hold of Santa directly.
Okay, well, maybe I have to call you offline and try to figure it out.
So many more questions.
There's 100 questions to ask.
We
got to make a longer segment out of this. General Coates, thank you so very much. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas to you all.
They use Rudolph's nose, right? That's the way they can track him? Is that the...
I don't know if it's a GPS situation. Also, Santa's hustling. I just want you to know he's moving around very quickly.
Fast. It's impressive.
We've had that conversation with our kids a lot about just how fast he's got to move at every home to make this all happen. We also have a big question in our household about whether he gets a discount or some kind of sales treatment with certain big companies in terms of manufacturing the goods.
Right, because he buys in such volume.
Well, the question is are the elves making it or in some kind of private label, white label branding system and then putting the brand on? We've had all of these questions being asked in the Sorkin household.
Actually, if you watch Elf, it's pretty clear.
It's clear how it's done.
Is that the elf with
Will Ferrell?
Or not the Hermie the elf where he wanted to be a dentist?
No, the classic elf.
Okay, because that would be the Heatmeister or with Burgermeister.
I want to know our household. Yeah. We want to know, how does he get in our? We don't have a chimney.
Ring doorbell.
Window. We've talked about that. Window.
Never heard it. Never.
Window.
Chimney.
Window.
He's magic. He twinkles his nose and goes down the chimney.
Window. By the way, shout out, because a lot of viewers actually were tweeting me yesterday about the Klaus movie. Watch the Klaus movie on Netflix tonight if you haven't yet with your kids.
Klaus?
Klaus. It is the origin.
German Santa?
It's the origin story of Santa. It's a sort of secular version. It's fabulous.
Wasn't he like a...
Check it out.
Well, all German fairy tales end with somebody being eaten or something.
No. This is just...
Okay, I want to make sure that I don't tell my kids...
No, go watch this. It's just so good.
The German fairy tales, you know what I mean? It's like, you were bad, and now you'll be eaten.
No, this is not a German fairy tale. This is a cartoon, fabulous film that's just out of... That's the origin.
Claus.
Well, Klaus. Because it becomes Klaus, and it's so good. Klaus. Evolves, you bet.
Coming up, Nike unveiling a new Colin Kaepernick branded shoe. Good idea? Or a PR disaster in the making? We'll hit that story coming up. And as we head to break, let's take a look at yesterday's S&P 500 winners and losers.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2016, when Oklahoma's Baker Mayfield hurls a 49-yard touchdown pass to D.D. Westbrook in a legendary shootout with Patrick Mahomes and the Texas Tech Red Raiders.
Snap, play action, rolling right, Baker, one to go deep. He's going to sling it for the end zone, looking for D.D. He's got it! Oh, mama! He's got a touchdown!
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
On the goal line, scores! He takes it home!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
Here's Pietrangelo, he scores!
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium.
A move, and a shot, and he scores!
From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Do you have a favorite true crime podcast this year? Here's a few of ours. On the latest season of Uncover, journalist Michelle Shepard investigates the unsolved case of a missing Toronto teen that has haunted her for 20
Toronto
years.
Police are continuing a desperate search for a missing...
And on Haunting Warhead, host Damon Fairless exposes the darkest, most shocking corners of the internet and the criminals who lurk in the shadows.
How do you take down a criminal network hidden in the shadows?
Search True Crime on TuneIn to discover these and more life thrillers.
The Better Network is now on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search the Better Network. That's the BETR Network. And then let us get you better prepared to better enjoy the day in sports. The NFL, college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. Sharpen your edge. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Be better informed. Be better prepared. Search the Better Network. That's BETR.
Christmas Eve right here in Times Square. Take a look at U.S. equity futures at this hour. The nice part is we have green, which matches the tree. We've got a little bit of red just to make it feel Christmassy. The NASDAQ looks like it would open up about almost 8 points higher. Dow Jones looks like it would open up about 15 points higher. And the S&P